Speaking at a political conference, former national security advisor to the President of the United States, Michael Flynn, was asked about a Myanmar-style coup happening in the U.S. Why couldn't it happen? He says there's nothing stopping it, and it should happen, which the best way I can see it is him calling for a military coup, saying it should happen here in the United States. For those that aren't familiar, there were claims of election fraud by the military in Myanmar, so they intervened. And people started clapping and cheering for this. And it's worrying because I often say this. It doesn't matter what you personally, what I personally believe or what anyone really personally believes. It matters what the factions believe and how many there are. Because there are people that completely agree with Michael Flynn. There are people that completely disagree. And we're not going to persuade them. So this is it. I mean, the fracture is here. And it's going to get, I don't know, I think the escalation is going to get worrisome as it is. We've got a bunch of stories about riots. Portland seems to be on fire every day anyway. And so we're going to be hanging out and spending this Memorial Day with retired Green Beret Joe Kent, who's running for office as an America First candidate in Washington's 3rd District, I believe, correct?
That's right.
Just north of Portland.
Yep.
This is the battleground, right?
Literally, yeah.
Do you want to just give a brief introduction to who you are, what you do?
Sure, absolutely. Joe Kent. I was in the Army for a little bit over 20 years. Was a Green Beret. Started out as an enlisted guy in Ranger Regiment, worked my way into Special Forces. So I joined just before 9/11. Was kind of born and raised actually in Portland, Oregon itself. And Portland was much different 20 plus years ago than it is today. So. Wow. Enlisted in the Army in 98, and then was in Special Operations already when 9/11 happened, and so that kind of set the next 15, 16 years of my life on the war path, literally. So I spent a good deal of time overseas, primarily in Iraq, some time in Yemen, and some time in Africa as well. Retired, and then went into working in the CIA for about a year, and then had to resign after my late wife was killed herself in Syria. So she was in the military. She was a Navy cryptological officer working with Special Operations. So she was killed about a month after Trump tried to get our troops out of Syria the first time. So that kind of propelled me into the political realm. Despite all the grief I was going through, I strongly supported President Trump's foreign policy, especially getting us out of the endless wars. We had to go defeat the territorial caliphate to take away the ground that ISIS controlled because of the existential threat they posed to the rest of the world. But once that was done, we had to get out as soon as possible because there's nothing for us in that area. So the way that the permanent ruling class and the government turned against Trump, and the way the media got in lockstep to paint it like Trump didn't know what he was doing. He was just this big savage, careless man who was going to pretty much upset the the liberal world order by ending a war. That really inspired me to start speaking out.
It's Memorial Day. I would say I think people, but I'm going to say I know people don't know or care about what today is, like we saw with Kamala Harris. It's a long weekend, but yeah. I sincerely mean it, man. Thanks for everything you did. Thanks for serving and for your sacrifices, and to your wife for what she did for this country and what she did to end. I mean, just the atrocities, like you said, man. ISIS was as bad as it gets, and there's a lot of things that the United States has done which has contributed to the expansion of extremists. We've had some pretty bad presidents, which is why I think talking with you about America First would be is going to be great. I mean, I was giving an example, like the Fast and the Furious program, which gives guns to cartels. We gotta do something about this, man. We gotta stop this stuff. But sincerely, man,
thank you
very much.
On Memorial
Day, I mean, thanks for being here. So we'll get into all this stuff. It's going to be a good conversation. We got Ian.
Well, hello, everyone. Ian Crossland over here. Good to see you, Joe.
Thank you.
Looking forward to hearing more about your experience the last couple decades.
Yeah.
It's gonna be good.
Lydia in the corner pushing buttons. I am decked out very patriotically. I intentionally wore red, white, and blue today. I was feeling very patriotic. So hopefully this will be a good conversation. I'm really excited.
Before we get started, head over to timcast.com, become a member to get access to our exclusive members area. Just click the big blue members only button. You can sign up. And we're going to have a bonus segment later tonight around 11 p.m. is usually when it goes up. When you become a member, you are helping us expand the company. It's, we're not going to go out and buy Ferraris. We're going to use your membership, the money that comes in. We're using it to fund this work. We're using it to expand. We want to hire more journalists. We want to create better shows. We want to build culture. And that's what you do. So it's supporting the cause. It's supporting our this company here and what we do. But if you really do like the show and you really care about these kind of conversations, then please share the link to this video, click the URL, click share, do whatever you got to do. Because we don't have the marketing budget of these big media companies. It's just you guys. You guys be the marketing branch, and then people can hear these conversations, and maybe some people will learn about what Memorial Day means. So without further ado, we'll just jump right into it. And I'll just ask you, man. Let's just start talking about your campaign. You're running as a Republican, but you're running as an America First candidate.
Yep.
What does that mean?
So America First, I'm running against a sitting Republican, Jamie Hura Butler. She voted for the impeachment of President Trump. That was kind of the straw that broke the camel's back. But prior to that, she had been a pretty horrible representative and pretty horrible Republican as well. So she voted to withdraw the funding to construct the border wall, the additional emergency funding that President Trump was using to secure our southern border. She voted in support of Obamacare. She voted for the war. She voted to keep our troops in Syria. She went along with the whole Russian bounties, Afghanistan lie from last year. So in every sense of the form, she is exactly what we need to get rid of in Washington, a career politician.
A Democrat?
A Democrat, right, exactly, yeah, a Democrat. So
it's the weirdest thing to me. I mean,
yeah.
Why would someone run as a Republican but clearly be a Democrat?
I think she just had blind hatred of Trump. She's been very outspoken about that. In 2016, she said that she penciled in Paul Ryan because she couldn't vote for President Trump. And then she kind of got quiet when Trump started to actually make progress. But then every key time that she could have stood strong and actually worked in the Congress to push through some of President Trump's key agenda items that he was elected by the American people for and that she rode his coattails into office on. Yeah. She folded every single time. She fell to the old D.C. mainstream media Lincoln Project narrative because it's easier to do, I think, in D.C. When you're disconnected from your people, it's much easier just to fall in with what the mainstream media pushes you.
So you're is it fair to say you're an anti-war kind of guy?
I am. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I am not a isolationist. I think we need to have a robust, strong military. We need to have robust intelligence capabilities throughout the world to keep us aware of what's going on so we can eliminate threats before they become a major crisis. But these endless wars, the way that we have really gone and done regime change wars and then not course corrected the times where we've really messed up, which has been the entire global war on terror, I'm very much against those.
What was it like? Like, how did you kind of, I don't know if rectify is the right word, but how did you come to grips in terms with it personally, like serving over there and thinking about that maybe you were there or that the U.S. was there for nefarious purposes? I don't know how you think about it.
Yeah, I think when I first joined the military, I just wanted to go fight for my country, very young, patriotic. Seeing the 1993 Black Hawk Down moment when I was 13, that was pretty key in my life because, it was the first time I think we saw like brutal combat actually on TV. Like the Gulf War, there was some television going on then, but actually seeing in 93 CNN filming American soldiers getting drugged through the streets, I was just like, wow, there's guys over fighting real evil and we're back here in the States just kind of hanging out. So I want to go do that. So, and then 9/11 happened and I'd already been in the military for a couple of years. And so we just trained and hoped that we would someday get our shot because that's what you want to do when you're in the military. You want to go fight for your country. So after 9/11, we thought that we had the most righteous mission ever, but we quickly pivoted from that. So for pretty much from the time that bin Laden and crew ran into Pakistan, I mean, George Bush even said in April of 2002 that we changed our mission to nation building and we were going to build these democracies in Afghanistan. And the next thing you know, they're like, guys, we got to invade Iraq. And then they made up all that intelligence. So by the time I got into war in Iraq, I was eager to be there, but I thought that someone above my level knew more than me. So the first time I went to war, I was 23 years old. I was a sergeant, Green Beret. We were tasked with either going out and finding or arresting members of Al-Qaeda or Saddam's regime. And then we got tasked with a classic Green Beret mission, which is to build militaries out of local forces. So we took a bunch of the anti-Saddam militias and we started to turn them into the Iraqi security forces. When I was going through some of the rosters of these militiamen, a lot of them had huge ties to Iran. They're Iranian funded militias. And then I was like, this doesn't seem like a good idea because Iran pretty much hates our guts too, knowing just the history of Iran and our dealings with them. So, but in the back of my head, I was like, surely somebody knows more than me. There's like generals somewhere that have a plan.
Did you know the history of Afghanistan and the Mujahideen?
Yes.
And all that. So, I mean, at a certain point, you're like, wait a minute.
Wait a sec. Yeah. I mean,
what are they doing?
You put some faith and you think that there's somebody behind the curtain at Oz. And then just watching how we just continued to double and triple down on failure. Like when I was in Iraq, when they gave the order to disband the Iraqi government and the Iraqi military and say that all these guys that were associated with the Ba'ath Party couldn't have jobs. And all of us that were on the ground level, we were like, this is a terrible idea. This would be like going to the town that my military base is in and saying, hey guys, you don't have jobs anymore. We're not paying you next month. And the government pretty much hates you and we're coming after you. But leaving us the keys to the armory. I mean, how do you think that's going to go? That's basically what we did in Iraq. So I just saw the narrative slowly get chipped away based on what I was seeing in the ground. And then
what was it? Was it contracts? The big companies were getting money. Like, why stay in there? Why did it become, okay, we're not after bin Laden anymore, it's nation building?
I think a ton of it was hubris. I mean, just really at the highest levels. I mean, people in the Bush administration, they really believe in that neoconservative ideology that if we went over, especially in a place like Iraq, because it's centrally located, it does have the potential to be independent and to be successful and really thrive. Because it looks good on paper, they thought, hey, if we just apply enough good old American force and a good old American can do, like these guys are just going to be like, well, thanks, America, let's have an election. And
yeah,
now
democracy just kicks in.
It just kicks in. We'll be your best friends. We'll cut you a great oil deal. Next thing you know, no, but none of that actually works. So I think people, they just doubled and tripled down on that idea because they were embarrassed. And the bipartisan effort that the Iraq war was, going back to our current president, Joe Biden, who was the head of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee at the time, there was bipartisan lying that went on to the American people. So then there became this bipartisan game of like, hey, we're all kind of part of this. And then the folks at the top levels of the military, anybody who disagreed with the way the invasion went, they got fired. And so all the yes men got promoted, and they just said, hey, we can make this work. And a lot of them, I think, probably had the best of intentions. They were like, hey, if the U.S. government's going to put this all on our shoulders as the military, we will do the best that we can. But at the end of the day, if you tell the military to go do stuff, they're just going to apply military tactics.
How long were you in Iraq?
So I have about 5 years total on the ground. I was there pretty much every year of the war, minus 2010, and then I went back again for our withdrawal in 11, then I went back again in the counter-ISIS fight in 16.
That was the next question I was going to have for you is, you went back to fight ISIS. Your wife did as well.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a really different kind of mission, I guess. So after you saw everything with the nation building, what was it like when ISIS was picking up these people? Like the caliphate was truly horrifying what these people were doing. Did you have a different vision of it? Like all of a sudden now you're like, this one matters?
Well, yeah. I mean, a lot of it too was I told you so. Not just me, but a lot of us that had boots on the ground. And when I was there in 2011, by that time we had pretty much handed the entire government over to the Iranians. The Iranians did a really good job of infiltrating the government of Iraq, so much to the point that Iranian generals like Qasem Soleimani felt very safe running around Iraq because they knew that we didn't have the actual political will to take them off the battlefield. Iran saw that they could kill American soldiers under Bush, under Obama, and that we wouldn't do anything. And so they felt emboldened when we left the country. They completely and totally took it over. But as they were doing that, they were disenfranchising, which is, to put it mildly, the entire Sunni population. So especially when the Syrian civil war broke out and Assad was fighting the Sunnis, you could just break it down geographically. As long as there was Sunnis in between the area just to the west of Baghdad and just to the east of Damascus, getting pushed by these two Iranian Shia forces, you had an absolute civil war. So the only means of recourse for these Sunnis was ISIS or Al-Qaeda or some form of Sunni extremists. So really, the evolution of ISIS was pretty much born the day that we invaded Iraq and then disbanded the Iraqi military.
And then it's really fascinating how, under Obama, I mean, it grows.
Yep.
Couldn't really do anything to stop it, but Trump just wiped it out.
Right. Yeah, I was there in 16 under Obama, and the rules, it was most deployments in the Obama era were, we have to be deployed because Obama doesn't want to pull us out because he'll look weak, but we also really don't want to fight. The latter part of Bush was that way too. Bush was just done probably like around, 06 or 07. He was just like, I'm riding this out and you guys are over there. And I'll leave it to the next guy to include negotiating deals for the status of forces. But Obama, those last years, it was the same thing. He had called ISIS the JV team early on. And then after that, he just did not want to deal with it.
Did you think that Obama wanted ISIS because it was causing problems for Assad and we wanted Assad out? So let ISIS have at him. And then we'll come and clean up. We'll sweep it up and take it once it's done.
There was definitely people in his security team, in his national security establishment, that I think did want that. They very much wanted another war in Syria. And I think a lot of them are still in the government right now. So I think that permanent ruling class of neoconservatives and neoliberals who, they say different things to justify their wars, but the end state is always more invasions, more occupations. I think those guys were pulling the strings from behind the scenes.
I've had a lot of conversations with people about Trump, the Abraham Accords, and the conflict. And on the surface, I think the Abraham Accords did a lot of good. Normalized trade between a lot of countries and Israel. But we've had people say it was nothing. It was just like these countries were already working together. I disagree with that. I really do think that when it comes to the Israel-Palestine issue, people are very tribal and just hate one side or the other. And I'm like, look, I think Trump was America first all the way. He didn't want to be involved in any of this. He didn't care about what it was. He said, what do we do to end it? I'm done. Let's get out. Why are we here?
Absolutely.
So we actually had, I think Scott Horton told us this, right? Where he said within the first 3 months, Trump ordered a full withdrawal from Afghanistan. He gets in office, says, get him out. We're done.
Yeah.
And they stopped him. They said no.
Yep.
They blocked him. And then we get 4 years of Trump, and then it never happened.
Yeah. I mean, it's just that there is that class there in the Pentagon, the national security establishment, that they are, I think a lot of them, and I understand this, and this has kind of been my story of my trajectory throughout my career. I felt that we needed to continue to stay over there. I felt compelled that, hey, we need to keep going over and fighting because we've lost so much, especially if you're in a leadership position. You're like, we lost these guys in this last deployment. We got to go back over and we got to make it right. And I don't just mean like revenge, but we got to go get something. We've given so much. We got to get something out of this. I want to make it work. And I think there is a lot of that, but I do think there's also a lot of, but then that quickly can shift into pride, into hubris really fast when a civilian leadership comes in and says, hey, military guys, like, this isn't working. What are you doing? It's like, screw you. I've been fighting and dying. Like, what do you mean it isn't working? So I think but there is also a lot of money tied up into that and a lot of careers. And there's been this whole machinery made to keep us at war.
What's that thing called where, people will invest in something?
Sunk cost.
Sunk cost.
Yeah. Gambler's fallacy.
Yeah. And the gambler's fallacy. They keep putting more and saying, no, now is I already put in $1 million. I'm not going to lose it. I'll just put in another and we'll get out. We'll dig ourselves out of this hole. And it's like, at a certain point, man.
You got to be honest with yourself at some point. I mean, I really wish that I could come here and say, hey, I served for 20 years and in the 5 years I have on the ground in Iraq, like I built this thing and it worked and we made the world a better place. I wish I could say that. But at the end of the day, our job is to win and our job is to do the best that we can for our country. And if we're not being honest and saying at like the halfway point of trying plan A that like, hey man, plan A sucks. It was my idea, my bad. Let's learn from that and let's shift to something else. But the government is terrible at that. Political agendas, but then also, I mean, the military, the occupation mindset and the occupation machinery, it is very lucrative. So
now you said you grew up in Portland?
I did, yeah.
You're running for office in Washington, which is the district just north of the Portland area.
Yep.
You're back from Middle Eastern conflict. You've seen the good, the bad. What's your plan? What do you want to do for America?
So the plan right now is the America First agenda. And the America First agenda, to me, is taking everything that we are blessed with here in America and producing what we can for our people to secure our country. So a big problem that we have right now, I think, in America is our deficit spending. Like, we're running the national debt through the roof, and that's not just fiscally bad. I think for a while we've been able to get away with that because America produced things, and America was actually a place where we invented and produced things. We've killed off that entire part of our country under the banner of either on the right-wing folks are just like, hey, whatever the market will bear, free market, man. If it's better for the market to ship all of our jobs overseas, then it's fine because we get more access to cheap crap at Walmart. And isn't that a great economy? And then the lefties come in and they say, hey, no, we can't drill for oil because that's bad for the environment. We can't cut down trees because that's bad for the environment. Now we're in this position where we don't produce anything. And China and then all the Gulf Emirates, Japan, all these other countries, they're eventually going to stop buying our debt bonds. And what happens when they stop buying our debt bonds? And if you're China and you have malicious intent towards America, to put it mildly, you stop buying our debt bonds, you could crash our currency. I mean,
yep.
And yes. that could make 08 look like a
cakewalk. There's been concern about the Belt and Road Initiative because China is basically, we send them petrodollar because we want them to use and support our system, but then they just use it to fund the expansion of, their trade routes and other factories, but they earn allegiance from other countries using the money we're giving them. Yep. So we've created this kind of downward spiral for America.
Yep.
I wonder if the crash off, is inevitable. The U.S. reserve currency will eventually it won't be the reserve currency anymore, the U.S. dollar. And there's already a lot of people saying that for the past several years, it's been the case. Russia and China have been dumping dollars. They're not as concerned. Yeah. They're preparing for a shift. And so if we don't get on track, like with what Trump was doing, bringing the factories back, securing our borders, getting people in America producing and working, then when that happens, it's going to be worse, as you said, worse than 08, probably worse than the Great Depression. Yep. But if we bring our factories back, secure our borders, start producing again, when that happens, we'll be all right.
Yeah, no, that's exactly it. So everything that we just discussed, I think sometimes gets dismissed as, oh, that's just an economic issue. It's not. It's a national security issue. I think we need to be on a war footing with returning production back to our country. So deregulating a lot of these industries that have been gutted by overregulation. In my district, heart of timber country, and that whole industry has been gutted over the last couple decades under the guise of environmentalism. We've just let these forests absolutely fester. We've killed off a very lucrative logging industry. So I want to start there and start restoring that industry so that we can actually have people stay in our state, graduate high school. They don't have to go to college, take a bunch of student loan debt, live in their town, and support a family off of one income. That was the American dream for a long time. We've been told by the media and the left that those days are over. You can't have that. You need to get a college degree at any cost, even if you take a whole bunch of college debt. And then when, I'd say from Gen X on, once we took on the college debt and we moved to a big city, half of those jobs have either been shipped overseas because they were tech jobs, or we've had legal immigration come in with the H-1B visa system, L-1 visa system, and absolutely undercut those as well.
Can we do that sustainably, the timbering?
Yes, absolutely. We totally can.
So what does that mean for you? You probably got a lot of environmentalists being like, these guys wants to come in and chop down our forests.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So we have to have the government control all the forests. No, I mean, it is in the best interest of the companies that would go and harvest the timber to do it responsibly. It's not in their best interest whatsoever to go and just clear cut acreage after acreage. I mean, these families, these timber giants, they've been doing this stuff for quite a while, and there's a way to do it. And there's a role for the government, but I don't think the federal government. There's a role for the state government and the local government to have some sort of checks and balances in there. So if you did get a bad actor who's like, I'm going to go clear cut all these forests, they'll never catch me, that we do have the mechanism to stop them. But having the federal government control half of our state land is just ridiculous.
I think back to 2016, watching Hillary versus Trump, and it really felt to me like we were entering this really dangerous period where the U.S. superiority was being threatened. We are the superpower. We control so much around the world, military bases everywhere. And one thing that we say too much on this show is Thucydides' trap, which is as a rising economic power supplants the dominant, there's a war that breaks out. So I think back to 2016. And it seemed like Hillary Clinton's mentality was, we will not stop. We are facing this threat to the United States, and we will blow up whoever we have to maintain our position. So when she was questioned about a no-fly zone over Syria, and she was warned that would lead to war with Russia, she said she didn't care. Right. She was like, so what? Well, you'll go to war with Russia. It has to be done. Trump said, why do we want to go to war with Russia?
Right.
We don't want to do that. We want to come back and make America great.
Yeah.
So I viewed Trump as someone who was saying, listen, we shouldn't be doing these things. The crash, if it hits us, we need to be prepared for it.
Yes.
And if we keep looking externally to just forcing our way to try and maintain this rickety system, we're gonna have that long fall. We're not going to have the ability to produce medicine, which we saw with COVID.
Yeah.
It's remarkable that when we're in this mass pandemic, no vitamin C, China makes it. Masks, China makes it.
Yeah.
Antibiotics, China makes it.
Yeah.
That to me was really incredible.
Yeah. I mean, just look at the lesson that we learned from the masks right there alone. That should have been a wake-up call. Yeah. Okay, it was masks, and it turned out that it really wasn't that big of a deal. But what if that was something absolutely essential?
I mean, it was vitamin C.
Yeah, vitamin C. And China's just like, hey, we don't have it, or you're done. Or if they want to be a bad actor about it. So, I mean, I think the best thing that we could do for our national security is bring back our industry and our production, and energy is a huge one. We saw what happened when Biden turned off the Keystone XL pipeline, and now gas prices rise. I mean, Hillary would complain all day and want to go potentially get in wars with Syria over strategically worthless land, or with wars with Russia to get into a fight over Syria. But at the same time, she lets Russia become an oil giant. If we put U.S. oil back on the market, all those prices go down and Russia has less money to play with.
It starts to make sense. Now, with Syria, they want to run that pipeline, the gas pipeline.
Yes.
With Russia, the U.S. shuts down the Keystone pipeline. The U.S., then the colonial hack happens. We have all these problems. Then Governor Gretchen Whitmer says she wants to shut down this pipeline.
Yeah.
Well, when you think about it, maybe the issue is they want to maintain the system of the U.S. reserve currency for oil. So take U.S. oil off the market so that the United States has to spend money on other people's oil, giving them an incentive to keep producing, giving them an incentive to stay on the U.S. dollar, right?
Wow.
Propping up the system that's failing.
Yeah.
Whereas under Trump, it was energy independence.
Yeah, I like the methodology where we just sell our own oil
I like
and produce it,
I like the methodology of not regime change wars,
Not, right? Exactly.
not going in nation building, and
Right.
then being more self-reliant. And it's fascinating to me that it's the conservatives that are actually arguing for more cooperation at this point, and it's the Democrats. The whole political ecosystem is like flipped. The neocons were like, we're going to go in and we're going to remove this guy and we're going to build this thing.
Right.
Now the conservatives are like, no, we're not isolationists. We just want to do our thing and sell and build. And that's international cooperation.
Right.
That's not isolationism.
Yeah.
So when they smear the populist right as like nationalist authoritarians or whatever, it's like they're the ones saying not to go to war and to make America great, which would require America to negotiate and trade with the rest of the world in a more peaceful way. But somehow these anti-war leftists view Trump as the problem. Well, I shouldn't say all of them, because a lot of them know how bad Biden and the Democrats are. But now we get Joe Biden. And another thing that we've heard is, Russia's building oil pipelines, becoming oil rich, and the U.S. is shutting ours down, taking away our independence.
Yeah, it's crazy.
They don't want to drop the system. They want the U.S. reserve currency to be this permanent system. I guess they don't want people in this country working.
Yeah, that's a crazy way to go about it, because if you want Russia to behave better, just take away some of their money, and you do that by bringing up the price of American oil or putting American oil back on the market.
If Americans don't produce anything, but the U.S. dollar is the reserve currency, then we don't have to produce all that much because we can just print money and then we get to buy whatever we want. We don't got to do work. That's unhealthy.
Yeah, it's
like
insane.
Rolling up your sleeves and doing hard work is good for personal development.
Yeah.
So I look at many of these socialist young people. They claim to represent workers, but they don't work. They've never worked for the most part.
Exactly.
I don't want to say every single one, but they think working at the college library or Starbucks is a real job. It's like go lift 50,000 pounds of luggage working in an airport and watching these or clean a toilet or clear a sewer.
Yeah.
What we have now are a lot of people doing menial tasks. They're unhappy with it because there's no purpose to it. But what happens, I guess, maybe there was some noble cause from some, neocon or neolib where they were like, if we dominate the world, we'll never have to work again. Well, now we have a bunch of gluttonous, entitled individuals who don't want to work, don't know how to work, and think things should be given to them. They've grown up in a system that has just given them whatever they wanted. What happens when that falls?
Well,
yeah, absolute chaos.
You see like the rise of ISIS. Like if you look at the Ba'ath Party you were talking about earlier in this Lockheed Martin, this constant military, they basically disbanded the Iraqi government, the Ba'ath Party. All these people, I don't know how many, thousands, became unemployed, and they had the access to the military, so they started ISIS.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if there's a direct paper trail for that,
there is.
But that's basically what happened. So if this global military-industrial complex is doing that to the United States now, and they're causing mass unemployment, that we might see an uprising of some militant wing organization, hence Antifa.
So
and then they could use that as an excuse to start a war against Antifa, which is what they did against ISIS.
Or that just causes massive instability in the U.S. for whatever reason.
And like a reason to deploy troops. More money for the machine.
There was a story in the Wall Street Journal. They said, how to know that inflation is here to stay. And they said, the Fed is saying it's temporary. We have a sudden surge of demand because the restrictions are being lifted. However, what they note is really interesting. They said American families are flush with cash. Yeah, they've been getting
because of all the stimulus.
Right, they've just been giving people money, but there's nothing to buy. So what happens? Now, some people couldn't pay their rent. People in big cities were having problems. But what happens to the average family where they're being given the stimulus and they're just putting it in their account and they're not doing anything with it? We see this all the time in the super chats. People are like, "Hey, here's a super chat from my stimmy." It's like a lot of people weren't sweating that much. They got this money. Some people said they bought Doge with it. Some people were saying, that they were buying Bitcoin or whatever. But so now we're hearing that a lot of people have a savings. They have cash. That means they don't need jobs.
Yep.
So McDonald's and these other fast food restaurants are offering $500, $1,000 sign-on bonuses. Yeah. No one needs the money. Or I shouldn't say no one, but a lot of people don't, so they don't take the job. Not only that, you can't buy the things you want.
That's right.
I hear every day from my friends like, man, I've been trying to buy a PS5. I can't get one. If the PS5 doesn't exist, why would someone go get a job to buy one? If you can't buy it, you can't buy it. So what do they really want right now? So that means a lot of people who normally would be like, hey, I need to get a job because I really want to get the new PlayStation, are going to be like, I don't need to.
Yeah.
I can live in a van and just sit here. Then you have people who have tons of money in their savings saying, as soon as the PS5 comes out, I can go buy it. Why get a job? I've got money in the bank. The only problem is if you don't work to make stuff, there's no stuff to buy.
Exactly.
So this seems like either accidentally, maybe it's on purpose, the mass printing of money, which Biden's now going to do another $6 trillion.
Yeah.
Hyperinflation is here to stay, but it's worse than that. supply won't come back if no one needs to work. And if no one needs to work, then nothing gets made. And if nothing gets made, no one buys anything. This to me sounds like it is the Great Reset.
I think the left, if we let them go unchecked, that's what they want, is they want total control. Because like right now with COVID, they're able to accelerate the program they've been working on for years. They kill off all the industry jobs through overregulation. The right establishment does it too at the altar of the free market. And then the culture war coming in and saying that everybody must go to college and you don't really want to have a family. You don't really need to get married, have kids, and all that type of stuff.
You can't have kids right now. I mean, climate change.
We might all die. It's irresponsible, right?
No, you can't.
So they want to be able to control people. Government becomes family. Government becomes God. And then now we have the stimulus coming in. COVID just let them fully accelerate, I think, the economic part, because then they had been talking about UBI for a long time, and people were like, we're not going to do UBI, and they kept pushing it, and then boom, it's like, whoa, guys, global pandemic, no one can work. Let's just get them all hooked on free cash, and now it's total control.
But it's not UBI, it's IUB.
It's IUB.
Yeah, it's indefinite unemployment benefits.
Okay, yeah. So it's even worse. Yeah.
But it is interesting, over the past year, and now we're halfway into this year.
Yeah.
People haven't been able to buy all the things they wanted. There's been shortages of everything.
And they're trying to condition people that this is the new norm. That, hey, you're just going to go long periods where like you can't work, but we got you. But you're not really going to be able to work hard to get the things that you want, because that's not obtainable anymore.
You know, I will say, first and foremost, I think it's good if people aren't being driven by material possessions for their self-worth. I think the idea that if people learn how to roll up their sleeves and go chop some wood to heat their homes instead of digging coal and burning stuff, I like that idea. Yeah. But this is not a conservative problem. I think conservatives, for the most part, know how to chop lumber and take care of themselves. This is a big city liberal problem. They're the ones who are going to be left high and dry.
This is.
I'll tell you what I find fascinating. All this is happening, whether it's just a natural flow of the system or it's intentional. Before COVID, there was this big push on YouTube for van life. Have you seen this stuff?
Yeah.
So is it a coincidence that YouTube is promoting all these van life videos? People go on YouTube and they say, hey, ditch your homes, go live in a van, quit your job. Yeah. It's like, okay, so you can't own a bunch of stuff. Right. You won't own a bunch of stuff. You'll live in a van. You'll take up less space and humans will spread out. I'm like, I like the idea of van life. I personally love the idea of being self-sufficient and personally responsible. Yeah. And encouraging these people in cities to do something. So I have no problem with, but I do find it very interesting that this narrative emerges. Then we get the whole lockdown thing. Yep. I think when it comes to COVID, the Democrats immediately said, don't let a good crisis go to waste.
Oh, absolutely.
And so I'll clarify too. I'm not saying, what I'm saying specifically is COVID was exploited by progressives and leftists for their climate change agenda. What I mean by that is very early on, they weren't on board with this idea of locking down. Fauci was saying, no, go on a cruise, no big deal.
Go to Chinatown.
Then all of a sudden they flipped, like, wait a minute, actually, we should shut things down. We should, pause everything. We should stop travel. Yep. They said Trump was wrong for banning travel. Wait, actually, I think they realized, like, wait a minute, this is very good politically for what we've been trying to do. Then all of a sudden, a 15-day to stop the spread turned into a year.
Still here.
Year and a half.
Still in Washington, my state, we're still there.
Yeah, because now vaccine passports. I think we saw it in the New York Times. The planet is finally healing because of the lockdowns. Yep. They very much were like, can we just keep this thing going as long as possible? Right. Because it serves our agenda.
I think they saw that a lot of the things that the media and even people on the right said that Trump was crazy for preaching on the campaign trail when he said we can bring back American manufacturing. All the economists said, no, those jobs are gone and dead, and there's no way that working class wages can rise. Like that had been the rule of economics for years. But Trump, between 2017 and right before COVID came, like working class wages were rising, and the economy was doing really, really well. And so they were about a year out from the presidential election, and so like you said, don't let a good crisis go to waste. Like let's accelerate this, and you can do that when you have the media pretty much 100% on your side.
Yeah, CNN particularly.
Yeah, right. The Cuomo brothers.
It's remarkable too because people can make fun of their low ratings all day and night, but they get hundreds of millions of views on YouTube. Yep. YouTube puts them on the front page. Right. You search for this news, CNN comes up.
Absolutely.
I can do a 2-hour interview with you. And then CNN can produce a 1-minute clip. And if you search YouTube, what are you going to get? You're going to get the CNN 1-minute clip.
They were posting COVID death numbers. Project Veritas really blew the lid off of that. It's just insidious.
Yeah.
Panic for views, basically.
Yeah, and then Trump sent out the USS Comfort out there, and they refused to use it while, Cuomo and de Blasio were stuffing old people back in old folks' homes.
You mentioned that things were going really well under Trump economically. It wasn't just wages. A lot of the things the progressives had been demanding were naturally occurring, like a 4-day work week.
Yeah.
Several large businesses announced that they were doing four-day work weeks because they were doing so well.
Yeah.
Reduced work hours. A lot of businesses announced this. Paid vacations, benefits. All of a sudden, we started seeing businesses be like, we're going to pay more, we're going to do vacations. The economy's doing so well.
Yeah.
So it's different from an artificial inflated wage increase
Right.
of like the government mandates it or it's required
Yeah.
because of mass spending.
Yep.
This was legitimately
true.
like the economy was kicking up.
Yeah.
People were having vacations. People were doing well. I remember when we were starting this show, I went to a furniture place and I was like, we got to buy furniture for the show. And the lady there was like, 2019 was the best year of my life. Because this was January of 2020. It was like December, January. We had a guy come out doing landscaping and he was like, last year was the best year I ever had. So this was genuinely people doing commerce with each other, but that's the opposite of what a lot of these Democrats wanted.
Exactly.
They didn't want everyone buying and building more.
Right.
They want a retraction.
Yep.
They want people living in vans under Trump.
That's right.
People were building castles for themselves, figuratively. Like they're improving their
Right.
homes. They were growing their families. Things were better than ever.
Those people are harder to control. You want I'm the guy that gives you your income. I tell you what little pods you can live in. Like you can't go have any of the resources. I'll give you the resources. That's where the left has just become the authoritarians.
I'll tell you what's funny. We have the meme. I will not eat the bugs. I will not live in the pod.
Yeah.
I think it's funny because I've said on the show numerous times. I don't mind eating bugs if I have to, because I think if you're going to be gritty, hardcore survivalist and want to be responsible, you'll do what you got to do to survive. And I don't mind living in a pod if it's like I'm in the forest. I've got my own little hut that I've built, and I'm responsible for myself. I'm fine with that.
Sure.
The funny thing is, the city-dwelling liberal types have been living in the pod already.
Yeah.
Like New York's been famous for their cubicle apartments where it's like the kitchen and the bathroom, like there's a toilet in your kitchen, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Everything's crammed together.
Yep.
So people in the cities have already been living in the pods.
Right.
Now the news stories are coming out saying, hey, go eat the cicadas, go eat the bugs.
Yeah.
That's the city people. You live in the country. We got chickens outside.
Right, exactly.
We have farms everywhere out here. You drive up, you walk in, they got fresh meat.
Yep.
You live in the city, you might got to eat the bugs.
Yep.
But so I'm like, if they want to do their thing, the only issue is they want everyone to do the same thing. They want they want rules that are based off of a city perspective that will affect literally everybody. Yeah. So then you live in the middle of nowhere and you've got, a cow and you want to, produce some beef, and then you get federal regulators saying you can't. We're putting a hold. So we recently went to farms and we were told like there's a shortage because the USDA or whatever regulatory agency was saying we weren't allowed to, serve up the beef or something. They were like restricting the dates because of COVID. Then you get the gun laws.
Yep.
They want to make people who live in the middle of nowhere who aren't the problem live by the rules of the people in the city who are the problem.
Full control. Everything they're doing is just geared towards that full control. Because people in the country that are self-sufficient or that have their hands on a key lever of the economy, production, like they're independent. They as they say, cling to their gods and their guns, and they build families, and they're kind of hard to go screw with, as opposed to the guys that live in the pods in the city that are waiting to work on the gig economy or they're begging for the next tech job.
I think it's funny too. It's like. It's interesting, like conservatives are defending liberals in a sense because they're like, we shouldn't have to do these things. And I'm like, wait, guys, like if you live in the country and you already know how to source your own food, how to start your own fires, you're proficient with weapons. I understand not the regulation pushing back, but if they want to live in the city and live in pods and eat bugs,
hey, go for it.
Yeah, just let them do their thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, don't complain. They're the ones who are going to have to do it. The cities are the ones who are going to have to dramatically change.
Right.
Is it like a miscalculation by these city dwellers out of ignorance that they're trying to legislate city doctrine for everyone across the country, or do you think it's more malicious?
I think at the top levels it's more malicious because you do. I think the top of the left wing, they really want that full authoritarian control. I think they've done a good job of kind of brainwashing lower information people, and they've done that by infiltrating the media and the education system. And most people that are going to live in a city, they've been told that, hey, to make it in the big city, you need to have a college degree in something, And so I think the universities had just became an indoctrination factory a long time ago, where they've been sold this whole religion of like, hey, whoever's in charge is who you listen to, is the professor in school, and now it's the government, and as long as we get our team in government, that's exactly who you listen to. And if the other team gets in, the mean orange man, like no matter what he says, like that's got to be wrong. And it's not just wrong, he's a Nazi. And so whatever you need to do to take that away is the right thing, and you're morally superior.
I think if I was going to make a prediction, either there's going to be a great upheaval, a very serious conflict, or within 2-3 years, everyone's going to be living in pods and eating bugs.
Yeah.
No joke. I think, people out in the country will still have their farm animals, probably be less likely to be eating bugs. But the way things are going, the way the political agenda is going, that's where we're headed.
I think this is a testing period right now. I mean, I think we're on the precipice of either the country drastically changing and we becoming way more authoritarian, where we have to listen to whoever is in Washington, D.C., and they have very control of intimate aspects of our lives, or I think we're going to see a huge pushback. I'm cautiously optimistic, I should say, that in 22 there's going to be a bunch of America First candidates to go and take the House and the Senate back, and then we're going to have 2 years of hard legislative fights, hard culture war fights, media fights. But I do believe then we're going to be able to get enough momentum to take the country back in 2024.
Yeah, so right now, the Democrats have a very, very, very slim majority or control, right? They don't technically have the Senate, but the tiebreaker goes to the Democrats, so they do have that power, but they can't break the filibuster.
Yep.
So not only that, they have to convince Manchin of everything, and he's a West Virginia Democrat, so it's hard for them to move. They do have the House, and there have been Republican defectors, like on the January 6th Commission, so they do have that.
Yeah.
However, it seems like things are really bad.
Yeah.
So they're saying, but inflation's going to make everyone's wages go. I read this article. They were like, don't be scared of inflation. It means your wage will go up. And I'm like, wow, preying on the ignorant. Your wage will go up after the cost of everything else goes up and your savings is decimated.
It's a tax on everybody.
And then, this is what's funny about Joe Biden saying, no, you make less than $400,000. You know, not a penny in taxes. Bad healthcare. So he says that. But what? And then all of these, lefty socialists say, see, he's not taxing us. And then he goes, I'm going to print $6 trillion.
Yeah.
And that is a tax on all of these people. He's taking your savings by printing this money.
Yep.
The value of your money goes down.
Yes.
So your wage will go up after the fact, after they've taken your savings through indirect means.
Yeah.
And a lot of people, they don't realize it. So because of these things, we've so let me just list some problems with the Democrats right now.
Yeah.
I self-reflect. I'm looking at all the Biden stuff, and I'm like, do I have Biden derangement syndrome? Like, was I just tribalistically like Trump's not that bad?
Right.
Now Biden's and Biden's bad. Okay. I've tried to give Biden credit on things, he sped up the vaccine rollout, and I was like, okay, if he's increasing the timeline and it's working, I'll say it's a good thing, right? If it's an improvement. Because I try to. I want to make sure I'm not just screeching it. However, he reopened the Homestead facility, which is the migrant children, expanding the McAllen facility. Kids are sleeping in dirt. Now, I'm not going to blame him for these kids because he's got it. But he is also the guy who ended Trump's Remain in Mexico policy, which is causing the pull factor. He's now smuggling children, his administration, in the dead of night to other states. Yep. You've got the policy in Syria, the missile strikes, the movement of soldiers, the funding of groups with Israel and Palestine, just exacerbating everything, a breakdown of Middle Eastern relations, hyperinflation, the unemployment benefits, the mass spending of money. And I'm like, man, this guy really is torching everything.
Yeah.
So maybe
it
will be enough that come 2022, people vote for the America First Republicans. Because I'll say two things. First, maybe a lot of people are disillusioned by the whole system and are going to walk away.
Yeah.
But maybe that will inspire a bunch of non-traditional Republicans to run, probably like you, to be like, America first, let's fix this country, let's do better. Because I'm not a fan of the Republican Party.
No, neither am I. And I think a big mistake that Republicans could make is think that they can stop the America First movement. Because if they go and they throw their money behind traditional candidates, the base that got Trump his victory, they're just not going to come out and vote. It'd be a huge mistake for the Republicans to make the mistake to think that people are loyal to the Republican Party. Like, they're not. They were loyal to Trump. They were loyal to America First. And it wasn't just Trump. I mean, there were some people who were, they love Trump, and I like the guy a lot too, and I think he was a great president, but it's not about a cult of personality. It's about the set of values that he put forward. And I think if the Republican Party doesn't fully embrace those, they're going to get taken over by America First eventually, but they could really screw up in this critical period that we're at right now.
There are a lot of people that, live and die by Trump. They scream Trump. They love Trump. They have Trump flags. And there are a lot of people who voted for him who are like, well, He believes in this country. It's the best we got.
Exactly. Yeah. And he's willing to fight back against the permanent ruling class. Like if you just have a career politician go in there, had we picked anybody else that was on that stage in 2016, it would have been the continuation of the Bush-Obama era and the Uniparty.
Yeah. So, how amazing is it that, like, how many countries on the planet are their own country second? You know what I mean?
Exactly. Yeah, right.
So it's funny how the idea of America first gets smeared, and I'm confused by that.
Right.
It's also how they smeared the idea of populism. I was always confused by that. I remember when it first came out, and they were like, "These populists are bad and it's dangerous," and I was like, "What are they trying to say?" I'm confused. What do they mean by that?
Right.
And then I'm like, "Wait, are they literally saying the will of the people is bad? Like when the people are having a democratic election in their constitutional republic, that's not a good thing, and the elites should be in charge by virtue of them being elites?"
Yes.
That's literally what they were saying. And it was confusing to me. And then I was like, wait. They literally mean popular. They mean like the regular people are like, hey, this is how we want things to be run.
Yeah.
I think there's certainly some arguments in that, we criticize the Democrats because they're trying to get everyone possibly to vote.
Right.
So they want 16-year-olds voting who have no political experience. So certainly in that respect, okay, I can understand the argument, but I'm still not going to vote for a Wall Street banker by virtue of him being rich.
Exactly.
That's the most ridiculous idea ever. So you get Trump. But now you're starting to see more and more politicians who are like, we're going to do right by America, then we can focus on everything else. What's amazing to me is you get on a plane. What do they say? Secure your own face mask before securing the face mask of those sitting next to you. And we're in a country that during a pandemic, when our businesses were locked down, the omnibus spending bill was sending tax dollars to other countries.
Yeah.
That is insane.
Billions.
What was it? It was more than billions,
Probably
wasn't it?
trillions, yeah. I mean,
we had 12 million to like Pakistani gender programs.
studies, yeah.
How does that? I would rather give 12 random Americans $12 million than send it overseas because at least it'll stay in the economy.
100%, yeah.
But it's because of the petrodollar, because they want these other countries using the dollar to maintain that system.
And those dollars make their way back into politicians' pockets through lobbyists and special interests and super PACs, and like it's a whole fixed system, and and it's not serving the American people.
I talk about living in the pod and eating the bugs and all that stuff. I've got no problem. I've said this all the time. If I get banned, what I'm going to do? I'm going to get in my van, drive down to the river, and just go fishing. Just mind my own business. I am very happy to just be sitting there every day looking up at the stars in a little tent, get a dog or whatever. I don't need much to be happy. And I think about America first, and the idea to me sounds like a lot of hard work. A lot of people are going to be doing a lot of hard work to support themselves. I think it sounds really good for the environment because what the current system, you know how insane the current system is? Skateboards. I mentioned this several times. You want to get a skateboard in the United States, here's what they do. They chop a tree down in Canada, send it to China, turn it into a skateboard, send it to California.
With a tariff, right?
Yeah, with all these tariffs. Why do that? That's terrible for the environment.
Insane.
Why not just have a guy in Pacific Northwest cut down a tree, turn it into a skateboard, and then put it on a truck and send it to you?
Yeah, exactly.
Cut waste. So when I hear about this idea of like bring the factories back, get Americans back to work, we'll be working. We probably won't be the biggest name, the wealthiest on the planet. You're not going to have 12 new iPhones every year, but you're going to have what you need. You're going to be responsible for what you produce. You're going to be happy with it.
Yep.
Instead, we have the opposite. We have entitlement. People who just get they want stimulus checks. They live in big cities. They work at BuzzFeed where they get paid tons of money to write articles about nonsense.
Yep.
I'm not a fan of that.
I really see this fourth turning in effect. Are you familiar with the fourth turning and how like every generation people become distanced from the past? You know, that people they're so soft that they have this I don't know air of like assumption or this like belief like they're owed things and peace and prosperity and like that doesn't like accidentally happen. That's
right. Yeah. They're it's been ingrained. Look, I have this story about my buddy. He started a company. He was trying to hire people. He kept hiring college grads. I'll give you the short version. And they kept screwing up. And he was like, I went through, hired 2 people. They screwed up. I hired 2 more people. They screwed up. I hired 2 more people. And I'm like, I can't afford to keep doing this. These people can't do the job. So then finally he hired some high school dropouts. Yeah. They got like the GEDs or something. But they had moved from, I think like Utah to California or Iowa to become actors. And he said these guys were perfect. And then he realized they took the initiative to leave where they live to go seek, their riches and their adventure, and they were self-starters. When he went to people who had college degrees, what he found was these are people who just did what they were told. Yep. So they couldn't solve any problems when a problem was presented. Yep. And then he realized, like, not only do I save money, but these people are more capable. I see these people going to college not because they're pursuing a passion, but because they were told they have to.
Told to. Yep.
So now for me, it's like I typically look for. I don't care if you have a degree or not. I care if you have a portfolio, you're passionate, and you can prove it.
Yeah, exactly. I think what happened with the greatest generation was they went through so much hardship and so much adversity in the war. They fought it collectively together. They all fought it so much that they didn't need to come home and talk about it and dwell on it. But they also had stuff to do. We had this whole production industry while the war was going on because we had to have it. And then Americans just fell in on that production industry, went to work and built the country that we had. And I think that the byproduct of that was the boomers, and the boomers had this horrible experience with foreign intervention in Vietnam. And so if you didn't want to go to Vietnam, what'd you do? You went to college. And so this whole industry got produced around, hey, like all the smart kids go to college, the dumb kids join the military, kind of spitting in the face, a little bit of rebellion too at the boomers who, not the boomers, the greatest generation who took service very, very seriously. And so now the byproduct of that is there's no collective identity of Americans. We didn't collectively all go through something, and then you throw in the whole college aspect too, where the divide is now class. The people that were smart enough to go to college to really learn how to follow instructions properly and get indoctrinated, because the leftists infiltrated the colleges a long time ago. And then the rest of the country, those production jobs, they all got killed, so they're disenfranchised. Then you have the opioid epidemic, and you have all these young men just looking for purpose.
I think a lot of these city-dwelling, college-educated individuals don't realize that what they do only exists because of the rural labor market, the farmers particularly, people who work in agriculture. It's really incredible how that is the backbone of this country. I mean, there's no food without these people. So you want to work in a lab, you want to work in a university, get your grant. Well, your grant only works because you can go and buy food because someone made that food.
Yeah.
They don't get it. So what happens is we have this system. People go to college. They say, going to college is your ticket to a better future. They tell their kids, you'll get a better job.
Just get a degree.
Just get a degree, whatever it is.
Anything.
And now these kids have, liberal arts degrees.
Follow your passion.
Philosophy, I believe it or not, people do get degrees in folklore and mythology.
Sure, yeah.
But what are you going to do to sustain the system? Nothing.
Yeah.
These degrees don't do anything. So you end up with a lot of people who have a lot of useless degrees, many who have changed their majors, but still demand higher salaries because they
think they're entitled to it.
They did what they were. Yeah, exactly. I did what I was told. I deserve it. Give it to me. Now here's the best part: these kids who are all graduating, and the adults, the millennial adults nearing their 40s who have this massive debt, are now the highest income earners in the country, demanding the working class pay their debts off.
Yeah, that's right.
Is this how often has that happened in history where the ultra rich demand the poor? I shouldn't say ultra rich, but where the wealthier class demands the government tax the poor to pay off their dets.
No, it's a recipe for disaster.
Is there going to be a revolt? Are the working class people going to step up and be like, I am not paying your debts? Your salary. Some of these people, they get jobs at $50,000 a year to write articles for BuzzFeed.
Right.
There are people at BuzzFeed who make six figures. They do really, really well. I mean, it's a legit company. They make a lot of stuff. But how is it that you can write, 3 or 4 articles per day about whatever nonsense? Here's a picture of a bunch of cats, and you'll get paid more money than a guy who's fixing your sewer.
Yeah.
That to me is incredible.
It's insane.
That's a problem with our economy. I've always felt this way since I was a kid. I always thought, why is it that baseball players get paid more than doctors?
Yeah.
Shouldn't doctors get paid a lot more?
Right.
Well, whatever your opinion is on that, I'm sure a lot of people say, well, the market pays. The market pays.
Yeah.
Well, here we go. Right now, you have people who are dredging through sewers, pulling out rat kings. You know what a rat king is? When all the rats get stuck together and they clog pipes, and you pull them out, their tails are all tied in knots. Yeah, there are people who have to put on. I knew a guy growing up. His stepdad would put on a full bodysuit and go into 5 feet of sewage and be trying to stick their hand in and clear out pipes. And there's needles and stuff, and that person gets paid less than some 24-year-old with a degree sitting in an office in New York writing articles about, here's 5 pictures of hamsters that'll make you laugh.
Yeah.
That system to me makes no sense and will be unsustainable once the working class, the labor, actually realizes that they're getting paid less, being rewarded less for their hard work and sacrifice.
Yeah.
And not only that, service members.
I think that's what terrifies the authoritarian left so much about America First, because we've become the party of the working class and the party of the middle class. We're the ones that say, hey, we want people to have a job. We want them to have their dignity and their individual sovereignty. I think that terrifies the left because they're seeing that awakening. That's what actually was so dangerous about Donald Trump, because Trump was like, I can make your guys' wages rise. I can put our country first. You don't need to play with this. You don't need to play by this system that has done absolutely nothing but failure. And that's why I think you've seen the left shift their focus so much to all these racial issues and critical race theory, because anytime they want to saddle us with more debt or do job killing economic policies, they have to distract from that, and they have to keep the racists fighting.
How do you convince somebody who works at BuzzFeed for high five figures that they're actually worse off than the construction worker making $25 an hour? How do you convince them? Oh, race. You make it about race and intersectionality.
Yep.
And so there you go. They've redefined the conflict so that they can keep people voting for them, convinced they're the saviors.
Yep.
When in reality, these New York, liberal types who are in their 20s, man, I'll tell you, when I first walked into that Vice building, I started working at Vice, and the job I had before that, I was working in nonprofits, and I was getting a real base salary. Before that, I used to work at O'Hare Airport, and I was loading bags.
Yeah.
$10 an hour. Eventually made $11 an hour, lifting about 50,000 pounds per day to load these planes, and it was hard work. And people got hurt, and in order to pay for their families, to fund their families, some people work double shifts all day, every day. And then I walk into Vice, and I see these people just like sitting back. They got like booze on their table. They got whiskey. They're drinking, and I'm like, "What are you guys doing?" Like, chilling. And I'm like, "You're getting paid like $50,000 a year." Not all of them. Vice was notoriously paid not that well, but a lot of these people were getting like 35 to 50, and they were doing nothing.
Yeah.
Relatively nothing. They did something. They'd get emails from people saying, here's a story, and they'd be like, cool. And they'd take it, and then they'd put it on the site. And like, some people wouldn't even show up for work. And I'm like, so it's true, man. You move to New York City, you can get a do-nothing job that pays really, really well. How long until the people who are actually doing the labor that supports this country, how long until they say, hey, wait a minute. Why am I making stuff for you and you don't do anything? There is an issue, I suppose, because people say, hey, the market pays what the market's going to pay. But then you look at how the policies of the left are functioning today. Joe Biden's just taxing the working class through inflation, and then giving money to people in cities who aren't working. Yeah. At a certain point, people are going to say, nah.
Yeah.
Once they start getting hungry, for sure. I think when the technology is like broad enough that you can communicate, you can establish like pockets of resistance for the workers to defy like the white collar oligarchy. But we need to figure out a system that solves for that, because throughout time, the workers have been rising up and overthrowing the government and creating a revolution that then they become the new oligarchy and then produce another form of tyranny that another group of workers have to rise up and overthrow. So like building a decentralized system where there's no oligarchy. I think that's got to be the only way.
Yeah, I think getting rid of our political classes is the key, because we can vote. We have elections. We should be able to do this, but we've just fallen into this two-party system, and the two parties have just pretty much done the same thing, which is screw over the working class. So that's why, I think you saw the establishment on both sides, left and right, go after a guy so heavily like Donald Trump, because imagine if there was more Donald Trumps, we could disrupt the entire system and really put it back on a footing where the working class people actually had a chance.
Check out this story from 2018. So this is from GeekWire. Clash at Amazon HQ. Construction workers shout down council member over plan to tax big business. So I don't know if you saw this story, but the videos went viral and it was absolutely hilarious. You had academic leftists wearing their, red salute fists shirts and Che Guevara.
Shirts,
and they were like, we want to tax this and we want to regulate this. And a bunch of guys in yellow vests and hard hats were shouting them down, protesting.
Good for them.
So these academic lefty types keep saying over and over again, we represent labor and the working class. They don't. No. They're the academic intelligentsia.
Yep.
They represent college kids who've never had a job.
Yep.
And these middle-aged dudes who work construction, who are actual labor, showed up and protested them.
Oh, it was in Seattle.
It was in Seattle. We need to see more of this. So let me read a little bit. They say that, so this is 2018. We have this video, the clash at I think it's outside of Amazon headquarters. They say council member Kshama Sawant asked reporters to join her in front of Amazon's iconic spheres as she implored her colleagues not to back down on the so-called head tax, despite Amazon's announcement that it will pause some of its growth plans pending the council's decision. But Sawant struggled to get her message across as dozens of Seattle iron workers drowned her out with chants of no head tax.
Yeah.
I don't see these lefty, Black Lives Matter types, Antifa types. They're not labor. They're not unions. They're not workers.
Right.
The unions are, my understanding is that many of them split for Trump. There's a big shift.
Yeah, definitely the worker bees of the unions. That's very red. I think very working class.
But the people who run the
but
unions.
the people who run they're in bed with the Chamber of Commerce and the Department of Labor. So yeah, I mean, I think that's just another reason why they have to have these narratives come in of racial inequality. Because if all the workers like kind of woke up and realized they were being screwed by the same permanent class, they would have a huge problem.
So right now in this country, and it's been this way for years, you have upper class, academic, intelligentsia, white collar workers claiming to represent labor.
Right.
They don't. But it is fascinating because if you look back at history when a lot of the philosophy and a lot of the ideologies were being written and conceived of, like Marx, for instance, there wasn't new classes have emerged. The middle class, it emerged at some point, upper middle class, upper lower class, lower middle class, upper lower, whatever. So you started to see all of a sudden regular people now becoming landlords. They weren't typically lords, but now there's like an expansion of different classes. And what happens is you end up with people who are fairly well off relative to everybody else, but they're not super wealthy. So they view themselves as labor. Well, I work for this big company. I work for this billionaire. Therefore, I'm not upper class. I am labor. But they make twice as much or 3 times as much as the guys who actually build buildings and farm the crops.
Right.
And now they're protesting as though they are the suffering, working class, but they're actually like they're mid-level bourgeoisie.
Yep. And most of them, to get that job, they had to go to college, and that's where the indoctrination started. So I think we could chip away at a lot of this, too, by waiving a lot of the college degree requirements, especially like in government. If I get into office, I want to start hiring people that don't have college degrees. I want to waive the requirement that to work on my staff, you have to have university.
Yeah, that's been a big trend over the past 10 years. Actually, it's been growing and growing. As I just stated moments ago, and a little in a previous bit, I don't care for college degrees. If you have one, if you don't, it's meaningless to me.
Yeah.
You show me your portfolio, show me your passion, show me you can do the job and you want to do it, then I'm down and we can work together and we can make some cool stuff happen. But when I get people like, here's my resume, I went to college for this, I'm like, that means nothing to me.
Right. Yeah.
Like I used to hang out at colleges. You know what I saw? I saw people going to school for like music production, just drunk all day.
Just right. Yeah.
They're just partying and drinking, and I'm like, and then I know some 16-year-old kid who was every day producing and making music and working with bands, and I'm like, and he knows 100 times more than that kid who went to college.
Yeah.
So your degree, I'm sorry, your piece of paper is great and all, but it means nothing to me. In fact, I'll tell you this: college degrees, in my opinion, detriment. You know why? People with college debt require higher salaries.
That's right.
And
Absolutely.
if the company can't afford it, you're going to lose out to the competition who can do the job and doesn't have the degree.
But it's the perfect means of control. Like you have the ideological test there within college, and people get really good at following instructions. Then they're saddled with all this debt, so they have to go live in the pod and eat the bugs because they can't afford a house out in the country. They have to go live in this city. They can't afford to have kids, make families. It's a genius way to control.
I really am not a fan of people saying like I have no choice, I have to do it. I think about the people who got on boats and just landed on the shores of nothing.
Yeah.
Said, let's start building.
Yeah.
Imagine that first ship that came from Europe to the United States.
Just hardcore people.
Lucky enough to meet in some circumstances, we have the story of the first Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
Like, hey, we're starving, it's winter, and the Native Americans we're going to help you out.
Yeah.
And then there's a lot of bad history there for sure.
Right.
But outside of that, there were people who said, I'm going to get on a boat for 3 months. 1 in 5 people will die on this journey,
right?
Literally just in the ocean before we even get anywhere. And then once we get there, nothing there.
But we're going to do it.
Now you have people who are like, I should be able to have a house. The houses exist. Give it to me.
Yeah, exactly.
So even people who, they get to the degrees and like, I have no choice. I have to go move to the city. It's like, have you considered just living the way humans have lived? Like, why do you feel entitled to all of the luxuries of life?
Right.
I think about this. When I was on the Williamsburg Bridge in New York, free to use for everybody. Somebody paid for it. Somebody built it, but you just get it for free. That's the kind of thing that people don't understand. They don't realize how much work and suffering and sacrifice was done for them so that they can have all of these free things.
Yeah.
Now they're entitled to it. Now they demand it.
Yep.
My attitude's always been like, dude, if I was in the middle of the woods and I was buck naked, that's zero. That's where I'm like, okay, I got nothing. I better get to work.
Yeah.
If I was, if I had a pointy stick, hey, I'm up 1.
Yeah.
Like I got stuff. This is good. Pointy stick's great.
Yeah.
No, but we're way beyond that. We live in luxury. We've got clean drinking water. We've got hot water.
Yep.
Even our homeless in this country are overweight.
Yeah, right.
It's actually a problem. We should get them better food. They're eating bad food. But we're almost a victim of our own success.
We definitely are.
Now people are trapped in this entitlement mentality instead of realizing what life is and that you're entitled to nothing. So how do we get out of that? How do we get people back to the chopping the tree down, just to get the wood for the winter, to heat their homes, to be responsible for themselves and not demand all this stuff from cities, from governments?
Yeah, I think we have a lot of work to do with messaging. Like, the more work that you do and the more independent you are, the more that you actually have your freedom. Like, we need to shift the culture from like, hey, you have all these things that are entitled to you. Like, by the time you're 30 years old, you should have a house. You're like, well, no, not really. Like, you should work hard enough to get a house. You should have the means to pursue life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That's what's so great about this country. But that doesn't mean anything's guaranteed. Now,
this is where I think many on the left and the right will probably agree. Well, I should say many on the left who are paying attention. It used to be a lot easier to buy a house.
It did.
The housing market wasn't as crazy, but the issue is the Federal Reserve. The system we have where Joe Biden is able to just snap his fingers and flood the market with money, strips everyone's ability, it hyperinflates.
Yeah.
It strangles the market, and so it is getting harder and harder to buy that house.
Yeah.
My attitude is, man, I'm not going to be demanding of anyone else. I'm responsible for myself, and if I have to go live in a cardboard box because that's what I have and have access to, like, well, you know what? No one's got to build anything for me.
Right.
So I'll go into the middle of the woods and I'll hike into the mountains and I'll figure something out. I'll live in a bus in Alaska if I have to, beaten down. But it is an issue if our society can't function because people can't buy houses because the market's been just absolutely manipulated and broken.
Yep.
And then I'm not surprised we're headed towards, some kind of crisis.
Yeah, we just had so much individual agency taken away from us by the federal government, for varying reasons. But the in-state has been total control. Like, the Fed's a great example. So I think we just need to get that rugged sense of what it means to be an independent American back. I think there's cultural work to do there, but I think really expressing to the American people the economic crisis that we're about to be in, because all these different countries right now could chip away at our economy. China could pull out the rug from right underneath us.
Yep.
So I think if we got back on a wartime footing to getting our production back online, I think we could potentially see a shift. It might take as much of it as a generation for people to understand that, like, hey, you're not entitled to anything, but you can go work hard.
Well, let's think about this. Joe Biden's got a $6 trillion spending package, and a lot of it includes repairing bridges and roads and infrastructure. Like, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, if it was just truly infrastructure, I'd be okay with that. But his infrastructure bill is like $6 trillion, and he considers everything. It's like childcare is infrastructure, and like all these different programs are infrastructure. Like, if he says infrastructure, then he gets to spend money on it, and it just doesn't work that way. So there's infrastructure work to be done for sure. But like, when you go and you repair a road or a bridge, like, that takes concrete, that takes steel. So let's produce that here in America. Like, why don't we have steel and concrete factories getting back online if we need to repair the infrastructure?
It almost sounds like it's on purpose. So here's a few of the problems. They say they want to increase the corporate tax. The corporation's got to pay their fair share.
Yep.
Then they say, also, we've got to pay everybody a higher wage. Also, free trade. No tariffs on imported goods.
Exactly.
Then China says, they complete the puzzle. They say, no taxation here, cheap labor with no human rights. And when you put those things together, what do you get? A corporation says, okay, so it's going to cost us an extra $10 million for salaries. It's going to cost us an extra $10 million in corporate tax, and we'll save $20 million by putting our factory in China.
Yeah.
Put our factory in China.
Right.
We can ship the goods in for free. It's incentivizing it.
Mm-hmm.
Now you look at Joe Biden's infrastructure plan, and yes, child care's infrastructure was the meme. At the same time as he's trying to rebuild infrastructure, which some of it is a good thing, he's also still pushing the unemployment. And now the child tax credit, which is going to give up to like $3,000 per family, which just gives people money so they don't need to work. Which means if you give a bunch of people money and they don't work, you're not going to find people in the United States who are going to want to produce the steel or the concrete, work in the quarries. They're going to be like, I'm good. And then the only option is for those companies that are getting contracted by the federal government. Biden steps in and says, I got $1 billion to build this bridge. So we're going to need, X amount of steel, X amount of concrete. The company's going to say, wish we could find somebody to do it, but nobody wants to work. I guess we'll buy from China.
Yep.
And it's once again incentivizing sending our infrastructure, our capabilities to China.
Yep. And then who do they have do the labor? I mean, Joe Biden just opened up our southern border. So we have then here comes the illegal immigrants for the handful of working class Americans that do want to work. Why are you going to hire working class Americans? You got to pay their health care. You got to pay them minimum wage. you can just go hire a couple illegal immigrants and save a whole bunch of money, and then whenever you're done with them, you can pretty much discard them. So
We're being gutted.
Yeah, we are absolutely being gutted. Yeah,
another, I guess you would call it a danger with our regarding our sovereignty is the way that we get paid, the way that our money system works. Like right now, you work 40 hours for a company, and then you trust that they're going to give you the money for it.
Yeah.
You make YouTube videos, and then you're going to trust that when YouTube says we're going to pay you that ad revenue, that it's going to arrive. But you still have to trust that the company's going to send you the money. You trust that PayPal is going to take that money and send it to you.
Sometimes they don't.
I know. And so we're on the precipice of a smart contract economy where the money just automatically goes. There's no middleman that holds it and sends it.
Yeah.
That's a big danger.
How cool would it be, with the crypto markets? You didn't get paid a week after you work or 30 days, like if you're a contractor. You're literally just watching the crypto trickle into your account. Every minute you work, your account
and if
is
the
going
taxes
on.
were paid instantly, I mean, that would be so.
And they
legit.
could be. That's another thing too. Like, we got a bungled up tax system.
we do.
The IRS knows what we owe.
Yeah.
They could literally just deduct and be like, "Have a nice day."
They play that guessing game.
Well, what they say is that these big tax preparation companies are incentivized not to end the system, so they lobby to keep the machine going, and it just wastes everybody's time and energy for the sake of the economy to keep the machine going. Hey, if they want to do a great reset, can we start with resetting the tax code?
Yeah,
and just
reset the
fixing
IRS.
everything? Yeah, seriously, because like a lot of these taxes don't make sense.
Oh, what a breath of relief that would be for people to have that stuff taken care of.
I think crypto
so easy.
is going to be awesome. But
Yeah.
so have you followed Bitcoin and all that stuff?
I have a little bit, yeah.
So I think Bitcoin is the one true key. These other cryptos are. I'm not one of these doomsayers. A lot of people hate what they're called altcoins, like Ethereum. These other companies.
Yeah.
No, I'm a big fan. I think the technology is fantastic.
Max Kaiser got in your brand.
What?
Kaiser came.
I
a couple
disagree with
weeks
him.
ago. Do you know Max Kaiser?
I do,
He
yeah.
loves. He came over and he's like Bitcoin all the way.
But I disagree
Oh,
with him.
You do.
Yeah, Max is saying all of the alternative coins are bad. I don't agree with that. I don't think so. I think Bitcoin's fantastic. It's decentralized. And I think if we were operating on that system or some kind of standard with that, you can't get a Fed to come in and pump money and devalue the system. You got Bitcoin, your Bitcoin's good. Because it's a decentralized system no one controls.
Would you say that Bitcoin is backed by the US dollar, or like Bitcoin completely replacing the dollar?
I don't think it replaces the dollar.
Yeah.
I think it holds value, and they call it digital gold.
Right.
So it's not necessarily something you're going to be using every day for buying stuff. However, Max said once it's around $500,000 to between like $500,000 per Bitcoin, like $1 million per Bitcoin, then you'll probably, that's when it stabilizes, when it's like, above gold or whatever. Bitcoin's just a store of value. It's almost like just a bank account. So a lot of these companies track your Bitcoin in dollar value.
Yeah.
And it goes up all the time. Now, the recent crash, people who are inexperienced with Bitcoin are freaking out, but people who have been using Bitcoin for a long time don't care.
Yeah.
Because if you're holding Bitcoin, you're not losing value. If you're holding dollars, you're losing value.
Oh, yeah.
So that's why I think Bitcoin is truly going to be incredible. There's some issues with it. It's fully trackable. It's extremely transparent in kind of a bad way. But I look at this as maybe that is a way to fix a lot of these problems. They're not going to be able to pump money into the market if people lose confidence in the dollar and they switch to a cryptocurrency market. You've got smart contracts. People can get paid on time. There's more trust in the system. However, the only way that can happen is if confidence in the dollar is lost, which would be some kind of mass inflationary.
Yeah,
and then people switch over. Well, it would be funny if it becomes Dogecoin.
If it's Dogecoin.
Yeah, it just becomes like some big standard. Yeah, I don't know though. I'm confident, and if I were to make a bet, I'm not giving anybody advice, I wouldn't be surprised if in 10, 15 years we were on a Bitcoin standard of some sort.
If you look at the trends, like the banking trends, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
The CEOs of JP Morgan, other bank industry, fully on board.
I think as long as we controlled that, and then we actually were a production-based independent country, that wouldn't be a huge deal. I think if China goes and says like, hey, the US dollar is so worthless, you guys need to buy into whatever China coin or some sort of form of Chinese Bitcoin, like that could be a major problem for the entire world. And I'm sure that's what China, I mean,
absolutely.
Again, with the way that we're running up our debt, like they could do something like that fairly easily.
That's what's scary. Yeah, if we don't do this right, and I think we're not,
No,
China could absolutely create a centralized coin and then
could.
replace the reserve currency and say we only do business in China coin.
That's the smartest way to fight us, really. I mean, Thucydides' trap of like us going and duking it out and shooting with China, like I don't think that's necessarily going to happen. But if I were China, I would just continue to purchase our debt so we gain the confidence that's always going to be there. We keep printing money. They keep watching us eat ourselves alive with critical race theory and racial tensions. And then at the time of your choosing, you choose to pull out and stop buying our debt.
Yep. I thought about this a long time ago. And I was like years ago, maybe like a decade ago. I was talking to my friend and I was like, man, what if China just one day said, yo, we're not going to make your stuff anymore?
Yeah.
We would just instantly be like cut off from everything. We'd be sitting here holding an empty bag. And I was like, man, what if they said that and then declared war?
Right.
We're totally screwed.
Yeah.
So I guess we can just fire the missiles, but then what?
Yeah, then what? Yeah, exactly.
Maybe that's intentional because they say that it prevents war, right? They want these free trade agreements so that we can't go to war because the U.S. is too dependent upon China. No, it sounds to me like when you look at what's going on with international trade, China's been exempt from everything. They talk about climate change and reducing carbon emissions. How often do they mention China?
Right, and China just says we're not going to do that. That's for the rest of you guys to beat each other up with.
They build new coal power plants.
Right.
So let's focus on that. I suppose. Here's my question. Right, America first, not isolationist, obviously.
Right.
You mentioned that with ISIS, it was like this real evil that needed to be stopped.
Yeah.
So it's hard to know when America first becomes we need to do something internationally.
Yeah.
So a good friend of mine, Cassandra Fairbanks, has been on the show before. And I said, we look at China, we look at the Uyghur camps and everything. It's very difficult. What do? We don't want war. We don't want to just go and fight this massive world war with China, and it would be catastrophic. But do we just watch as they commit atrocities? Cassandra said, she's like, no, I'm anti-war 100%. There's no, tons of countries are committing atrocities. We don't get involved. We can't just go and start war with a massive country. And I was like, what about trade sanctions? And she said, well, that leads to war. So how do we deal with something like that, right? If we want to take care of America first, we want to be self-reliant. At what point would we intervene, say, with concentration camps?
Yeah, I think with foreign interventions, we have to have a really clear national security objective. Like this, whatever it is overseas, threatens America, threatens our sovereignty, threatens our ability to conduct free and fair commerce. But there also has to be a clear end state. Like we go out and ISIS is a great example. We go and we take out the territorial caliphate, and then it's mission complete. We come home. We call it good. We still leave the ability to collect intelligence, occasionally strike if needed, but we don't go over there and occupy. Like there's a clear-cut objective. Like with the Uyghur camps and a lot of these human rights violations that go on throughout the entire world, it's just a slippery slope. And so we intervene then in China, hypothetically. Where else do we intervene? So whenever the far left says hey, anywhere there's an atrocity, it's our responsibility. That responsibility to protect doctrine that Samantha Power and a lot of the folks in the Biden administration just love. To that I say, hey, well then go sell that to the American people and then tell them that we need to start the draft because we're going to be at war freaking everywhere. Because if you never traveled outside this country, I hate to break it to you, the world's a dark and dangerous place.
How about a bill that whenever there's a conflict, whenever we see an atrocity, we put it up for a national vote.
Yeah.
Everybody votes. And if you vote yes, you're drafted.
I would be down with that.
That was actually proposed, I think, before World War II. They were like, anybody who wants to vote for war, you got to go join up.
Yep.
Because you can't make someone else fight for you.
Yeah.
I'm down. Because I'll tell you this. If there was something where I truly thought we had to intervene, then I'd be the first to be like, what do I need to do?
Right, exactly.
If I'm looking at the concentration camps in China, I'll be like, how can I help?
Yeah.
Obviously, I don't think frontline infantry makes sense for me, but I'll absolutely do what I can.
Yeah.
What makes sense. However, I'm not absolutely convinced we should intervene.
Right.
I think Cassandra made a really good point. She mentioned, there's a bunch of countries you see these groups in Africa, Nigeria, what they're doing to these young girls, and do we intervene there?
It's horrible, but
don't we do though?
I mean, that's where I'm like, hey, start the draft because it's everywhere, guys.
Right. Exactly.
But I think with an actor like China or pretty much any of these countries that aren't in total anarchy already, us being the economically strongest country in the entire world, that gives us a position of advantage. So then we can say, hey, China, turns out, number one, we don't need you. Number two, if you want to do business with us, then how about you stop the genocide in those Uyghur camps?
Yep.
And until you do that, we're just not going to do business with you.
We could be doing that, but Disney is saying thank you.
Right,
to
exactly.
These groups.
Yeah, Disney and the NBA and whatever.
John Cena.
The pro wrestler guy. What was that all about? Insane.
That's pathetic.
Yeah, that just shows their control. It's
So apparently, I don't know if it was might have been the movie. I'm not sure. There's like an 85% revenue decrease. I don't have the story.
Yeah, in China.
Was that Fast 9?
Yeah, so F9, I guess their revenue from Chinese theaters dropped by 86% because of what he said.
wow.
You know what I would do if it were me. I was like in a movie and then I said I've been to a lot of countries. I've been to Taiwan, and they're like, oh, I'd be like, dude, if you guys are mad, whatever. I don't say. Have a nice day.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't tell you, man. Like, it's like, am I going to pick and choose who's offended and who's not offended? Nah, if you're offended, well, sorry, I guess.
Yeah, and that just shows how China has their fingers in every aspect of our economy. It's scary.
It's an issue of the violent tendencies of leftists or the threat. So when you look at Antifa versus, say, the anti-woke, classically liberal individuals, big tech and these corporations always side with Antifa because they're the real threat.
Right.
They're not concerned about a bunch of intellectual dark web types. Could you imagine like Dave Rubin leading a pitchfork march to like Twitter HQ and like throwing bricks through the window? It's not going to happen. He's gonna sit in his studio and he's gonna ask people questions. But Antifa will show up with bricks. So when an argument breaks out, who's Twitter going to side with?
Oh yeah.
Well, Dave Rubin's not going to throw a brick at us.
Right. So
Antifa will.
Yeah.
So when it comes to China, you can smack talk in the United States. People are still going to go see the movie.
Yeah.
Not in China though.
Not in
so
China,
you apologize to. So you apologize to China. But let me ask you this, right? So before we get into the super chats, we'll do one more. You're in the southern part of Washington, the district you're seeking to represent, 3rd, and that's the border. That's the front line.
That is
from Washington to Oregon. Right, that Vancouver, Washington, and the river, and then Portland.
That's right.
You're the first line of defense against the Portland Antifa and their violent mobs. But no, in all seriousness, yeah. Tell me your thoughts on what's going on with that violence, because it does cross over into Vancouver.
It does.
You've got Patriot Prayer over there. So, this is where you're seeking to represent. How would you deal with this? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, it has to be dealt with. So we need to treat Antifa and BLM like terrorist organizations. Like, we need to use the tools of the federal government, the FBI, the U.S. Marshals, go after them like organized criminals and terrorists. So we start arresting these guys and charging them with federal terrorism charges. That's going to take away a lot of the incentive to go out and riot.
But not the groups. You mean
the leaders?
The leaders.
The leaders. Yeah.
But so let's get into the nitty gritty though. I mean, a lot of people do have a right to fly that flag and speak their minds.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
You're not talking about going after them, are you?
No, I'm not. No, I mean, at this point, like right now, after a year plus of this amount of violence, we know who the leaders of Antifa are. I mean, I know Portland police officers, and they're like, yeah, I know who all the agitators are at this point. Like, I've arrested them, and we have to let them go.
Right.
Over and over again.
These are people who actively organize violence.
Right.
And terror.
And terror, yeah.
There are a lot of people who might fly the Antifa flag or the BLM flag who don't.
Yeah, exactly.
However, there's a very serious challenge where you get to a point where, in Portland, for instance, they're linking arms, forming a human shield as people throw explosives from behind them.
Right.
At a certain point, whether you're active in that organization, you're aiding and abetting.
Terroristic
attacks.
Yeah, you might not get the 10-year federal terrorism charge, but you're going to get aiding and abetting. And once we start actually having repercussions for these people, the base of support is going to die down a good deal.
I think, when it comes to the leaders, we absolutely need the feds to go in, but they're too preoccupied with, January 6th or whatever. I think for the people who are just, doting about and bumbling and providing that warm body as a shield, you put them in you lock up for a weekend and actually just charge them for, look, a lot of these people are going to get 6 months if they actually got convicted. That's not the end of the world for any person. It's not a felony charge. That would put an end to a lot of it.
Oh, absolutely.
But what happens is these people, they show up they're playing a game.
They are,
So you get people who actually are engaging in terrorist activities. I'll put it this way. Michael Flynn, he made the statement we mentioned early on in the show, and we never actually started a segment on it, but he said, someone asked him about a Myanmar-style coup, and he said it should happen here, and a lot of people were like, oh, but he's not being serious, he has no power, or he's LARPing, and I'm like, that's irrelevant what you think he's doing. There are people who are cheering for that. That's dangerous. Like saying there should be a military coup in here. People are going to hear that, and that's one more grain of sand. Yeah. So on its own, that may be fairly significant, but not the most powerful thing ever done by any person, or might not lead to a catastrophic moment. But when you get some regular dumb lefty type who has no idea what's going on, put on a black mask, and show up, they have become a grain of sand, which has made that a heap. Antifa would not be able to be burning down these buildings were it not for these people.
Right.
So if you know these people are doing it, or you don't, I put it this way. Imagine people are like, hey, everybody show up at, the Bank of America on 7th Street. We're gonna protest. And you show up, and a bunch of people put on ski masks and go in and start demanding money, and you stand there linking arms. I mean, you're helping them rob the bank.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like
exactly.
you get in trouble for that. So anyway, so the leaders who are organizing the violence, we know they're doing it. They're not getting charged. But what about groups like Patriot Prayer? Because they've started fights. Some of these guys, they've gone down. What are your thoughts on that?
So I think by and large, there's been some of the Patriot Prayer guys went down there and they were expressing their First Amendment rights. I mean, if anybody went and they assaulted somebody, then I think they should be prosecuted too. We can't have two systems. It can't be like we prosecute the guys in the MAGA hat, but then we don't prosecute the guys burning down buildings. Because then you get the situation that we have right now where you have cities on fire for months on end because there's no repercussions whatsoever. So I think if you do something illegal, regardless of who you are or what your political affiliation is, like you should be charged for it.
So one of the problems we're seeing right now is a lot of these district attorneys are leftists.
Yeah.
So when Antifa walks in there, they get two files. One says MAGA, one says Antifa. They say MAGA guy prison for life, Antifa guy free to go.
Let them go. Yeah.
Yep. So then we can look at what happened in New York. You had Antifa show up to this Proud Boys event. They're harassing people. They're attacking people. One guy got robbed. His backpack was stolen. And so the Proud Boys are leaving, and, there's Antifa all over the place. They decide they're going to go at them. So the Proud Boys run at Antifa. One Antifa guy throws a bottle. They get into a fight. Proud Boys win.
Yeah.
It's kind of not surprising. But what happens then is when it comes to questioning by the police, Antifa runs away. They refuse to cooperate. The Proud Boys, doing the right thing, cooperated with police. They got 4 years in prison.
Oh, yeah.
And Antifa got away, and no one knows who they were.
Right.
So this is this is one of the problems we have in this country. It works the same way with gun laws. You say we're going to ban this gun. Okay, well the criminals don't care.
Yeah.
There's a video going around right now. They're saying it's like, a group of people with assault rifles, and I'm like, it looks like some dudes in an urban environment with like short-barreled full auto some sort. I can't tell what it was. And I'm like, yeah, that's like legit hard to get NFA. And this dude's, how did he get that? In a city, these guys are serious. Regular law-abiding citizens won't have any of that stuff. When you look at what happens to the Proud Boys, these guys are like, yes, officer, we believe in you, thank you, we'll cooperate. Now they're in prison.
Yep.
The lesson here is don't cooperate with police because you're not going to get a fair deal, or at the very least, you can see how the system works. Yeah. If you show up and do the right thing and admit and give the information, they lock you up.
They lock you up, exactly. Yeah, and there's just been no repercussions whatsoever for going after these terrorists, essentially, for months on end. And it's just spread. Like, violence never goes away unchecked. If people act violently, they don't just say one day, oh, hey, it's the 15th of the month, let's stop being violent. Like, they actually have to be met with force. That's just that's the law of nature. That's the way it has to go. And so we actually have to put this back in the bottle by arresting a lot of them. And I think if we started arresting the leaders and exposing who they were and how they were being funded, like we did with the mafia back in the day, a lot of the popular support that these groups are getting in places like Portland would go away, because right now they're thriving off this whole narrative that, hey, these guys are out there fighting fascism. They're fighting for black lives. People believe this stuff. Yep. People in the suburbs of Portland believe this. They donate money. They donate political support. I mean, the neighborhood I grew up in gave almost $500,000 to the bail fund that Kamala Harris was promoting to bail out people that were burning our city down. I mean, that's a level of popular indoctrination that just amazed me.
It's hard to fight. But you're in a Republican district.
We are. Yep.
That's really interesting. Just north of Portland.
Just north,
it's Republican. And you got to win a primary.
That's right.
The way I see it is, I've said in numerous videos, segments I've done over the past couple of months, like, why bother voting for these Republicans when you empower people like Mitch McConnell? And what does he do?
Agree.
The Republican Party in 2016 and 2018 had the ability to do stuff. Trump got in 2017. They could have made some moves.
Yep.
We knew the censorship issue was going to be a huge problem for all Republicans. They did literally nothing. And I'm like, uninspired. Lindsey Graham fist bumping Kamala Harris on the Senate floor. It's like uninspired.
It's the same party.
However, if people like you get elected, right now I think Marjorie Taylor Greene is like one of the only fighters.
Yeah.
Whether you like her or not, I'm not. Yeah. She said a bunch of dumb stuff on Facebook at one point, but she pushes back. She fights in very similar ways to many, like the Squad. She's bombastic. She's loud. Exactly. She pushes back. And so I'm not saying, if Congress was entirely comprised of just clones of Marjorie Taylor Greene, would be a good thing.
Right.
But you need people who are not part of the establishment, who are going to vote against this stuff. I look at the two parties, and there's after Tulsi Gabbard left, I'm not convinced as a good Democrat anymore. Yeah. And I disagree with her on some policy issues, but I think she was honest.
She was honest. Yeah.
She was trying.
Yeah.
And I look at the Republican Party, and I'm like, maybe 10 Republicans.
Yeah, it's a handful.
Need more.
Yeah.
And if you can get a lot more in, maybe in 2022, there will be some significant changes. I bring this up because I'm thinking about what's going on in Portland. How do you get the FBI to actually deal with these people? Well, you need some political power.
You do need
the Republicans will need to control the House, probably, and the Senate, ideally.
Yeah.
And not only that, you still have to go. You still have the issue of Biden, but then you can do more committee hearings. You can do subpoena power.
Absolutely.
But you'd also needed many of those Republicans to be populist, American first.
Yeah.
People who are not part of the establishment crony machine, people who actually want to see things improve. Yeah. I do have a fear of encroaching authoritarianism, though. Mm-hmm. One of my fears is that Antifa has acted a fool so much, people will just say, get the feds and start locking these people up.
Exactly.
And then you get an equal and opposite reaction, which is still not a good thing.
Yeah. I mean, it has to be done right, but I think if we treat them like a terrorist organization or like organized crime, go after the leaders, make an example out of some of the guys that are out there locking arms and enabling it, that a lot of it would just kind of go away because people don't want to get arrested and slapped with federal terrorism charges.
Right.
But then there does have to be a clear point where we bring the feds back. And I think we can also offensively use a lot of federal funding for these cities because Ted Wheeler, the mayor of Portland, he's let all this happen. And then Kate Brown, the governor, and then in Washington State, Jay Inslee, he's done the same thing of Seattle. I don't think those governors and mayors deserve a penny of federal taxpayer dollars. Like we send in the feds to clean up the Antifa. And after that, we're like, hey, until you guys start prosecuting criminals and you take care of all these rampant homeless and drug issues and crime issues, like you're just not getting any more money. Sorry.
Yeah. Man,
if we called them terrorists, if we declared Antifa as terrorists, would then the mother of the leader of the Antifa that he lives in her basement, would she be implicated for terrorist charges?
No. But you still get due process. I mean, it's still the federal government, and then the FBI and the U.S. Marshals going in and arresting them. They still get day in court.
What I find fascinating? People genuinely don't believe Antifa is real. They don't
right.
exist.
It's just an idea.
But it's because they watch CNN.
Right.
They don't actually read the news. They don't know these things. And so they genuinely think Antifa isn't a real thing.
Yep.
And so I see these posts on Facebook all the time where they're like, it's a meme. Antifa just means anti-fascist. There's no Antifa group. It's not true. And then I'm like, here's a list of all the known Antifa affiliates. Yeah. Like Rose City Antifa in Portland. Literally a group with people, with leaders. They have a website. You can sign up to join the group. The group exists. It's called Antifa. There's New York City Antifa. There's Salt Lake City or whatever.
Yeah.
They literally just call themselves City Antifa.
Yeah.
They exist. They cooperate with each other. They work. When there's if you're in between Seattle and Salt Lake City or whatever, they'll meet in the middle and both groups show up.
Absolutely.
But they say it's not a real thing.
Right.
And then what happens is you get these hearings where, and I don't understand where the Republicans are to push back on this stuff, or I don't know if they can do anything anyway, where they're like, the biggest threat in this country is white supremacy.
White supremacy, yeah.
I'm like, well, there's 10,000 of them. And that's by the ADA, the ADL standard. Not the ADA. No, the ADL. There's 10,000 people.
Yeah.
Yeah. How many active Antifa are there? Substantially more.
Oh yeah.
We've seen the protests across the country. There's a lot of them. Now the worst offenders are a lot less.
Yeah.
But mass protests for a year, riots, smashing up windows.
Yeah.
I think that's a much bigger threat. I suppose though, when they're flying Black Lives Matter flags at our embassies, of course to them the biggest threat is white supremacy.
White supremacy. Yeah.
To regular Americans.
And the left has no incentive to go after Antifa and BLM because they execute their political policy for them. And we saw that in lighting the cities on fire in the year that Trump was trying to get elected. And then right now, the way that they've jumped onto this whole Palestinian issue, you see the whole Palestinian flag getting flown by Antifa, and that's all being done because Joe Biden is screwing up the Middle East. We gave money back to Iran. Iran gave money to Hamas. Boom, we got a war going again. But to run cover for that, just in the same way Antifa and BLM brings up all these racial issues to keep the working class distracted. Now we have Antifa saying, oh, it's all about Palestinian liberation now. That's part of the Black Lives Matter movement, run distraction.
It's tribalism.
Yeah.
That's all it is. Because I went to Belfast, and they have the peace wall from the Northern Ireland. And on one side it's Palestine, on one side it's Israel. And I asked a local, I was like, why, what's with the Israel-Palestine thing? And it's like, the one side thinks they're oppressed, so they associate themselves with Palestine. The other side thinks that they're the natural right, so they with Israel. And I'm like, that has nothing to do with Northern Ireland. And it's just they identify it's leftist causes for one group, nationalist causes for the other
Yeah.
group, and I'm like, that's all it is.
Yep.
This, and that's what I think we're seeing a lot of that here, where people are getting into fights over Israel and Palestine. And I tell you, man, there's a lot of people, I hear them screaming like pro-Israel, screaming pro-Palestine, and I'm like, I don't understand. Like, I'm hearing the same thing from both sides. I'm not here to equate. I'm just saying, man, people are really tribalistically involved in that conflict, and it's really hard to figure out. Let's take super chats though.
Okay.
If you have not already, give a little tap to that like button. Help support the show. Share the show with your friends. And thanks for being here on Memorial Day. I know most of you probably just wanted to, sit back with the grill, getting the burgers going, and, having your long weekend. Thanks, Kamala. But I guess she came out later. And, what's funny about that is when Donald Trump was like, Happy Memorial Day, to all of our brave men and women who served. Our economy is great. And they were like, how dare Trump minimize Memorial Day? And then Kamala Harris is like, enjoy the long weekend.
Yeah.
It's like, is that what it is? It makes me sad, actually, man.
It's pretty sad.
Yeah, I wish people were like, we should have like something happen on the TV and people do an event and talk about like, yo, this is like serious stuff. But instead it's like, we're going to go drive to the beach
Yep.
and grill burgers.
Yeah.
You know what, though? It's a double-edged sword, I suppose. It's the men and women who fought to defend this country that allow people to go have that long weekend and enjoy the burgers at the lake.
I would watch YouTube videos of like stories told by Vietnam veterans.
Yeah,
They'd come on for like an hour or 20 minutes and give their first person account basically, or you hear their third person account of what they experienced. That's what you should do if you want to remember.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah.
Let's
read
read
horror people have experienced so that you can live this good life.
That's right.
Let's read some of these chats. We got Chad Randall. He says, Joe, what do you think of the Greater Idaho Plan? It is the joining of most of Oregon to Idaho.
Yeah, I mean, I understand why the majority of Oregon wants to leave Oregon. They want to get away from all the craziness in Portland. I think it should serve as a wake up call, really, to the folks in power in Oregon. We have the same thing in Washington too. I mean, these urban centers are absolutely destroying their states. So I hope it wakes them up, and then, but also, power to the people. If they want to align with Idaho, then God bless them. I hope it works for them.
Yeah. Charles C. says, hi, Joe. Thank you for your service. Any advice to those thinking of joining the Army today?
Yeah, do your homework. Like, know exactly what job you want, because recruiters, their job is to put a body into the military, and there's a lot of great jobs in the military. So go in there with a game plan. Don't let the recruiter pick the job for you.
They're like, you're going to be piloting spaceships.
Yeah, exactly.
And then it's like you're in like a simulation room. It's like you're typing on a computer and you're pressing go and you're just wasting your time.
Yep.
Yeah, I hear a lot. I've heard a lot of stories like that from people where it's like they describe it in the best way possible. And then it's like the worst iteration of what it could be.
Yep.
You're going to be going on adventures, and it's like they just put you in a remote base somewhere.
Yeah.
It's like you're just sitting there. All right, let's see. Bobby Bob says, you and your quest have helped me find the spine to be extremely vocal on Facebook. I feel so much better. Those who truly care about me stayed, and those are the people I want in my life. It's encouraged others to do the same. I'm hearing these conversations more.
Awesome.
Right on.
It's partly sad though.
It is.
I mean, think about it. You've got, the average person has like 300 friends on Facebook, and you post, "Hey man, I'm concerned about this," and half leave.
Yeah.
We're just polarizing ourselves.
We are. And people just don't have the ability to have discussions anymore. I mean, I grew up in Portland, like pretty liberal place. My parents were conservative. They used to just have discussions with their friends, and it wasn't like no friendships were ended. You know?
Now it's serious.
Where we're at now, it's crazy.
All right, John Wayne says, April 2003 Task Force 120, ring a bell, Joe?
Yes, it does.
Says, I was there with you, currently living in your district. You got my vote.
All right, right on.
Wow, cool stuff.
Man.
All right. Matthew Reckham says, I was in D.C. today, and in the metro station, I saw an ad to be ready to save a life, carry Narcan nasal spray. The opioid epidemic is out of control. What, is that for real? That's crazy.
Yeah.
Wow. Clay Chapman says, Joe, have you ever met John Stryker Meyer?
I have only heard him on podcasts and read his books. Yeah. Legendary Vietnam Special Forces guy.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Here's a good one. Daddy Day says, Joe, are you pro-nuclear? Why or why not?
Like pro-nuclear power? Definitely pro-nuclear power. Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, because that's just another way that we can have energy independence and energy security.
And there's a lot of fear-mongering around it from environmental groups when it's actually the best carbon-free, carbon-neutral energy source. It's ridiculous.
Absolutely.
I worked for Greenpeace briefly. One of the things that made me kind of disillusioned with them, I was only there for a few months, was that they were like, nuclear power is bad. And then I looked to one of the founders of Greenpeace who was like, nuclear power is an excellent way to reduce carbon emissions and create high energy density. And I'm like, What's it?
What do you say?
Yeah, like I don't understand, and it just felt so political to me. Man, people like nuclear. AFI's Deep End says, Joe, what is stopping America First agenda from being powered by nuclear tech?
I don't think anything is.
Nothing.
I still want to be energy independent with our oil, but yeah, nothing.
Here we go. Seven Empire says, Joe, I'm a fellow refugee of Portland, Oregon, now over the river in Washougal.
All right.
Ex-AF security forces. Regretfully and naively voted for JHB in 2020. You have my future vote. Thank you for your service.
Awesome. Thank you.
There you go. Brandon Youngquist says, Tim, I listen on Spotify. I work graveyard shift and can't listen live. I listen to every show later. Wanted to say I live well below my means and more people should adopt this lifestyle. And Trevor is the worst and I miss Luke. I think we reconciled with Trevor, though. Yeah, I think we apologized because Trevor felt bad.
Okay.
And then he came back and we were like, you're all right, Trevor.
Much love.
All right. W Couch 8 says, please ask your guest his thoughts on the Defense Department screening National Guard for political bias for the inauguration.
Oh, yeah. So what's going on right now with the Defense Department and the whole ideological test is absolutely insane and very dangerous. So we're essentially making our men and women in uniform take a ideological oath of allegiance, not to the flag and the Constitution, but to the political party in power. So they've gone through and started looking at who was aligned of Trump, pro-Trump Facebook posts, all that type of stuff. And
Gadsden flags.
Yeah, Gadsden flags. It's just absolutely crazy. So, and right now they've got all the commanders in the military running scared. So that's why you see so much, I think, woke virtue signaling coming out of the prominent leaders in the military.
Man, that kind of stuff is creepy because they start reassigning people of certain ideologies, start discouraging it, and then you get a woke military, and they'll do whatever the tribe, whatever the
that's right,
the cult wants.
Praetorian Guard.
Yeah, exactly. All right. E Honda 420 says, hey Tim, I started my YouTube channel about 2 years ago and I've been doing a weekly conspiracy podcast called The Gay Frog Chat. It's funny how many things talked about on that show come true in that time. Yeah, it's a weird time to be alive, man. It's a weird time to be alive. Anything About Tech says, Joe, thank you for your service. What can I do as a civilian software engineer to serve and help serve our country? InfoSec, robotics, or what? Or is it not even a good idea to attempt to contribute under this administration?
I understand, because of what we just talked about with what's going on in the military. I understand the apprehension. I still really highly encourage people to serve in some capacity, especially in the tech sector. I mean, we're fighting a very heavy tech cyber war right now, mainly against China. But I think pushing for cybersecurity is absolutely essential.
I think people don't realize that you could arguably say we're in a new hot war with China because of the cyber conflict that's been happening. I mean, Google got hacked a couple of years ago. It was a very serious breach. Yeah. These things are...
They breached the DOD. I mean, you know, the whole what are they, Office of Personnel Management leak.
And we just keep going on. It's not a big deal. And man, it's just scary stuff. All right, Mexican-American Conservative says, Mr. Kent, we need you, bro. By the way, there are more gun-servatives out there than libs. They just shut our voices out on social media. It's all manipulation.
Very true. We are the majority.
Tim Bow says, hi, Tim and team. It's Tim. Hey, Tim. How's it going?
Hello, Tim.
Screw Solar Roads is a project to cover water canals with solar. Saves on evaporation and uses existing infrastructure. Hey,
very cool.
There you go. That makes sense.
Interesting.
Chemical X666 says, Joe, were you in Al Assad in 2006? I was building camps for the Green Berets while I was in NMC B40. Here's a few bucks for a few rounds to remember all we lost. Raw Seabees.
Right on. I was out there at that time, I didn't stay for very long, but we were in and out of Embark Robinson. Yeah.
It's kind of crazy how many people were like, were you here? Were you here? It's like, oh, man, I know that, That's cool. All right. Viva Frey says, Godspeed, Joe. Keep on keeping on. What up, Viva?
Hey, Frey. Yeah.
John V says, I never went to college and I'm going to cross right at 110K this year. Right now I'm hauling 20 tons of food into big city that wants to eliminate the fuel I'm using to bring their food.
Wow.
Yep.
I think that guy understands the economy better than lots of PhDs.
It's like a bunch of dudes building a bridge and they're driving across it to bring food into the city, and the Democrats are voting to chop the bridge down from underneath it.
Yeah.
All right, man. All right, let's see. Where are we at? Not Locutus. Oh, good for you. Says, I live in your district, sir. From one veteran to another, you can expect my vote.
Awesome.
Right on.
Thank you.
Eric Miller says, add a little facial hair and grow your hair out, and Joe Kent could become Jon Snow. Vote Jon Snow to take on the woke walkers. I mean, White Walkers.
I actually had hair about as long as yours.
Nice.
I didn't get a haircut for 2.5 years after I got out of the military.
Oh,
so.
wow.
Yeah.
And then I cut it for the Congressional.
Gotta look good.
Yeah, the job interview, got to tidy up.
I don't know. Maybe up there it would have played well.
Yeah, it was 50-50. Yeah.
Really?
That's funny.
Yeah, I was
Are there like
"Should I
consultants
keep-
who are
should I
like,
keep it?"
the hair works in the Pacific Northwest.
Yeah, I definitely thought about it.
Carry like an axe and a saw with you and wear like a red flannel. So
Yeah.
I'm a lumberjack. I live here. All right. Jonathan Warner says, first super chat. My friend and brother who I served with for 6 years in the Minnesota National Guard committed suicide last year.
Oh, man.
Today I remember Joshua Roland Lindsay and all my other fallen brothers and sisters. Sorry to hear it, man.
Yeah, sorry.
But greatly appreciate, everything that you guys have done. It's Memorial Day, man. People need to, I say this. I've been around the world. You've been in much more serious places than I've been, but I've seen other countries. And I remember the first country I ever went to outside of the U.S. It doesn't count. It's Canada, right? It doesn't really count. It's America
Right.
Junior. Then I went to Spain, saw some conflict. Okay, Spain's a different country. And then I started going other places. I went to Brazil. I went to Turkey. Turkey was the next country I went to. And then I started to really realize, I'm like, man, America sure is awesome.
America's pretty awesome.
And I would come back after spending so much time hearing all these activists and all these leftists talk about what their problems with it were, and like, the feds and all the things they hated, which they now love for some reason. But anyway, I just remember, I think it was like after maybe like Morocco or Turkey or something, come back to the U.S. and I'm just like, oh,
Right.
like, oh
Yeah.
man. And then I walk up and they're like, what are you doing? I'm a journalist. And boy, am I glad to be back here. I'm going to go to Five Guys. I'm going to
Yeah,
get a double
exactly.
bacon cheeseburger, bowl of peanuts.
Yep.
Man, some of these places I've been to, scary stuff. That
Yeah.
people have to live through this stuff. We
Yeah.
really have something special here.
It really changes your perspective. I think getting outside the country and getting to a rougher part of the world, like you can come back to America and you're like,
There's
wow,
a lot of places.
we got it.
And it's not just that too. It's like even going to like Scandinavia, not just Sweden. I've been to Norway, and the ideological homogeneity is also freaky.
Yeah.
It's like everybody agrees with everything, and it's like just kind of weird. It's like I like in America that some guy can just, you can see a house with the Trump flag and a house with the BLM flag next to it.
Yeah.
I'm like, that's rad.
That is good.
Now don't fight. But I
Right,
think it's
right.
funny that people,
Yeah.
we have this, although it is getting a bit extreme.
It
to be
is,
honest.
yeah.
All right, let's see where we're at. Matterhorn V says, we were misled being told we needed college in the 90s and the aughts, the Audis, is that what it's called? Individuals need higher education. The modern world will survive with less English majors, but it won't survive without electricians.
Right.
Well, when the market corrects, I suppose, they start paying electricians more, which they probably already do, actually.
Yeah, yeah, because it's hard to get people to come work on your place.
This is one of the problems, is that people get a degree in feminist dance, and then they're like, why can't I get a job? The electricians are getting paid well.
Yeah.
Just go get an apprenticeship.
Yep.
But they don't understand, so they demand the government regulate it and fix it
Exactly.
for them. Brother Bro Vet says 350,000 Vietnam vets were killed by Agent Orange. If the VA didn't hide this number, would Americans still tolerate the abuse and corruption in the Pentagon and permanent political class today? I mean, they know now, right? Is
They
that,
know
is
now,
that number
yeah.
accurate? I'm not super familiar.
I'm not sure if that number is 100% accurate. I'm
sounds a bit
not
high.
questioning him. It does sound a bit high. But yeah,
Yeah.
there's definitely been a good deal of covering up of Agent Orange, and now we're living through our own crisis of the suicides and the burn pits and all
Like
that.
depleted uranium. I heard that the rounds used
Yeah.
in the first Iraq War in '93 were like
Yep.
radioactive. So there's all those bullets in the dust, basically,
Yeah.
because the tanks would have depleted uranium armor, so
Yep.
you needed depleted uranium rounds to penetrate
Yep.
the armor. So then all this radiation has caused what they called Gulf War sickness
syndrome, yeah.
syndrome.
Yep.
Matthew Reckamp says, if the infrastructure bill was only going towards infrastructure, we'd be able to put routers in a tunnel to get internet access in our subways.
Mm-hmm.
That's always been crazy to me. Some subways have it.
Some do, yeah.
Yeah. Navasa says each altcoin aims to solve a different problem in the economy. Bitcoin can be the gold standard equivalent, but VeChain covers supply, logistics, etc. Sure, a lot of people are always mentioning their particular altcoins, the ones they like, and a lot of these aren't decentralized.
Yeah.
Like Ethereum runs on, Amazon services, so it's more like it's a company token,
Yeah.
It's- So I think there's decent investments in a lot of them in a certain way. That's why I love crypto technology. Bitcoin is truly decentralized. Austin Brown says, this is why crypto is the future, and Elon doesn't make sense. He knows it is the future. You invent Tesla and SpaceX without knowing crypto is the next real deal. All these different people, a disparaging term, will turn into 1, 2, 5, 10, 50, 100 it will be everyday. Oh, I'm sorry, cryptos. Okay, will turn into 1, 5, 10, 20. Is that what he's saying? Will be everyday use.
Sure. Yeah.
I think Dogecoin actually does has a good potential to be used as like cash.
Mm-hmm.
It's 2% inflationary. People were telling me every year it goes up by 2%. The supply is 2% increase, and it's a really fast and efficient exchange. So it actually could work if they get some developers on it and make the system more robust. You could actually just swipe it. Boom, Doge is the cash. People tried making Bitcoin Cash be the cash to Bitcoin's gold, and like might be Dogecoin.
Yeah,
it's got meme potential. AP says, "Hi, I really enjoy your videos and guests. I am transferring to UC Berkeley, and I was wondering if you had any advice to deal with CRT. Also, do y'all have opinions on right to repair, e.g. Apple products? I think you should have a right to repair. As for critical race theory, I don't think arguing with people who have the opposite of your moral framework will work. People seem to think, like we hear Antifa doesn't exist. Yeah. I see it all the time. There's a guy who's like, posting on Twitter. It's a viral tweet, and I'm like, you're not going to convince them.
How you can argue that? Yeah.
They know they're lying.
Yeah.
Because their moral framework is different from yours. You believe I should be honest to the best of my abilities. They believe there's no truth but power.
Yeah.
So how do you argue with that? You can use the Alinsky rules for radicals and make them live up to their own standards. So if you are, actually, I don't think your race matters because there's a bunch of white progressives who are engaging in this. The way I always say is like, look, if anyone ever tries to call you into a meeting on diversity or whatever, the moment they mention white anything, get mad and say, I'm sorry, is this a meeting on white people? Like, are we seriously going to bring everybody in here to talk about white people again? Are you a white supremacist? Yeah. Use their own logic against them.
Right.
If you're having a meeting and they bring in a bunch of minorities and start talking about white people, sounds to me like they're trying to have a meeting for white people. You know what I mean? So there you go. Right.
Sounds kind of racist.
And then if they don't, you can accuse them of ignoring white supremacy. So no matter what they do, that's the point of their ideology, to wield power against anyone who opposes them. You can do the same thing.
Yeah.
I'm not entirely convinced that's the right way to do it, but
Yeah.
maybe fighting fire with fire works when it's a controlled burn.
How would you say not giving your money to University of Southern California, Berkeley,
Yeah,
or
why-
wherever they're going?
Yeah, why are you going to Berkeley
Yeah,
anyway?
why?
You might want to go to Liberty University or Hillsdale.
A lot of
I'll-
better places too.
I'll give you some advice. My advice is you shouldn't go there because what'll happen is you're eventually going to get a professor who's going to say, I want you, everyone needs to write a paper on why white people are bad.
Yeah.
And then when you're like, they're not, they fail you.
Yeah.
And then you just spend money for nothing. So why go at all? Why not just go start a business? Like, I guess people on the left don't want to do this, but I played guitar on the subway. I just started doing my thing.
Yeah.
Make stuff and sell stuff.
did that
Yeah,
for a while in
absolutely.
New York.
I made CDs once, played shows, and then sold the CDs. We're not in the era of CDs anymore.
Yeah.
But you can put music up somewhere, record it with. It's so easy to record music these days.
Yeah.
You're not going to get massive studio Hollywood, whatever production, or Nashville production. I guess that's the music place. But you can record stuff with your phone. You can get apps to help you make it better.
Yeah.
All right. Jimmy Quinto says, I was hired to bring back a dying business from a guy who has an MBA and couldn't make it work. I did, and I asked for a raise and was denied because I didn't have a college education. You quit. That's it.
Yeah.
I worked for a company once, and they were like, we want to give you a promotion, but you need a college degree. And I was like, I can quit right now. And they were like, hold on. And then the regional director was like, degree or nothing. I said, adios.
Yeah.
And they were like, ugh. I'm like, I don't need to work for your company. But I got hired at a company that required a college degree. It was really simple. You know what I did? I went in the interview, and they were like, I had college listed on my resume because I went for like a month.
Yeah.
And they were like, so did you graduate? I was like, oh, no, I didn't graduate. And they're like, well, this job requires a college degree. And I was like, I understand. Yeah. And they're like, but you don't have one. And I was like, no. But if you want to hire the person who's best for the job, well, then clearly you'll hire me, as my resume clearly shows. I've got the requisite experience. But if you want to hire someone with no experience at all, fresh out of college, by all means, you can do so with my blessing. I don't need to work for you. And they were like, no, you're hired. Yeah, they were like...
He sold it.
Nice.
I'm like, dude, if you're not smart enough
Yeah.
to see that I'm better at this job and my experience is better than any college degree, I wouldn't want to work for your company anyway.
Exactly.
And when I was in LA, my agent was trying to get me booked for union gigs. I was non-union, and in order to do a union show, you have to be in the union. They really only cast, or that your first job is a union show. They'll give you your card, and you can join the union. So my agents and most agents would say, just put that you're in the union on your resume, and then when you get in there, if they like you, they'll hire you. It doesn't
Yep.
matter, and that's what happened.
And then and then after what, 3 times you get your union
They were
card?
like, yeah, no, the first time they saw it, and they were like, well, you can defer to your first one, and then they were like, oh, you're not in the union, and they just stamp it and put you in the union.
Put them in the union.
Yeah.
All right, let's see. Brian Fontenot says, no concern for quantum computing breaking standard encryption overnight, or to say kill crypto overnight? There is, absolutely. And by certain standards, by certain news stories, they might already have the technology to break it. However, there's, I've talked with a lot of experts about this, and they say there's always the option of a hard fork. There's always developers, and the decentralized network can always repair any crypto that if quantum computing breaks it, then the system has to be robust beyond just one pitfall. If quantum computing can break it, well, that's a problem. But there's a lot of things that could probably break it. 51% attacks are a big threat. And the market cap for Bitcoin isn't that high, so they could have done it a long time ago. We don't know. However, I think most people, there's different countries, there's different financial interests, all have a vested interest in preventing the system from breaking because they've got too much wealth tied up in it. So that's why the more these companies invest, the more confident I get in it. Because do I think, Goldman Sachs is planning on losing money in their crypto investment?
Yeah, exactly.
I don't. I think they're planning on making money.
And you'd build in redundancy to the system so one hack doesn't take down the whole thing.
Quantum computing can break standard encryption, which would unravel the blockchain, allow for pure manipulation.
Yeah.
But I was talking to some crypto experts who explained to me why they weren't concerned with that at all. They were like, I can't remember, I'm not an expert and I couldn't explain. But that used to be a big concern for me. I was like, I don't know, man. I probably would have bought way more Bitcoin back in the day. But all the stories about quantum supremacy, Google's got a quantum computer with like a ridiculous amount of qubits. And I'm like, I don't know if I want to get involved in something that could be overdone by new technology. And then I had a bunch of crypto experts like explain to me why it wasn't a concern. And then I was like, I don't know exactly what you're saying because I'm not a crypto guy, but, I'm not a cryptographer. But if the experts, that I know and trust are convinced it's safe.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I guess that's all you can really do, right? I don't know why I would have confidence in the dollar.
I was just going to say that. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. How much more shaky is that than the dollar?
The U.S. government has guns, I guess. But
I guess, yeah.
China and Russia have guns too.
Right.
Frank Skula says, hey, Tim and gang, how are your live events going to work? How much notice will people have and what kind of experience can one expect? Would I have enough time to drive from Texas to where you guys are at? Give me details. In all likelihood, the answer is yes. We'll probably do the announcement a week in advance. So like on a Monday, I don't want to say exactly on a Monday, so I won't know for sure because I don't want people just sitting there spamming refresh to try and get tickets first come, first serve. But, you'll get at least a week's notice that like, hey, this Friday event tickets are up. And then we're going to do first come, first serve tickets. Then we're going to do auction-based tickets. And so we try to balance it so that the people who are active and see the email notification or whatever will just right away be like, I want a ticket. We don't have a big capacity. Like this is a small space, so we probably can only get like 30 people, and that might be pushing it. So then the other idea is the auction-based system, so that if you're busy working and you have the resources, you can be like, okay, I'll spend X, my max on a ticket, and you might be in the top 15 and you might get it. Although some people might spend a ridiculous amount of money, and I mean, it's just we couldn't do just one or the other. We had to try to make it balanced so that everyone gets an opportunity, considering there's limited space. But we're working it out. We wanted to do this in February. We had to wait because of standard legal business stuff we have to fill out and paperwork, and COVID made everything not happen. Like you can't get paperwork done. It is ridiculous. It's starting to reopen, so we're hoping soon we'll be able to do the live event. So it's like legit. I was like February. It's like March. We're going to do the event, and then it was like, here's the paperwork you need to do it. It's like, okay, well, I don't have that. Can we get this done? It's like, well, the offices aren't open because of COVID. It's like, oh, okay. Well, that's lame. We'll get to it though. We'll get to it. All right. Mr. Full Metal Gats says, "Hey Tim and gang, awesome show tonight. Can you let Joe know that there are Chinese military soldiers at Fort Jackson with NIPR accounts? NIPR accounts?
NIPR,
what is that?
Yeah, it's the unclassified government system.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I'm not sure
Crazy.
why there would be Chinese soldiers there. That's kind of crazy.
Does that sound real? Like possible?
No, I mean, we don't do military exchanges with the Chinese that I know of. I mean, we have countries that we're friendly with we'll bring over and they'll get access to some computer systems, but I certainly hope it's not the Chinese.
Yeah. I heard that they were like in Canada or something. They were doing drills or...
I believe they have done drills with the Canadians. Like mostly just exchanges, ceremonial stuff. I don't think they were actually doing military maneuvers.
All right, let's see. Whoop, it just jumped on me. I love when that happens. You get a big flood of super chats right away. Where are we at? Here we go. Magnificent Devil says, hey, Tim, big fan. Wanted to clear up something. Most mature crypto is decentralized, not just Bitcoin. The dev project doesn't control the blockchain. The miners or validators in proof of stake do. But what I mean is, like, Ethereum is on Amazon Web Services, say on AWS, which means Amazon could be like, bye-bye, Ethereum, boom, gone.
Right.
All right, let's see. The ghost of Teddy Roosevelt says, bully for you, Mr. Kent. Maybe it's time to bring back the Bull Moose Party.
Yeah.
There you go.
I got endorsed by the Bull Moose Project.
Oh, right.
Saw that.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Jay Bond says, moved to South Korea to pay off 100K college debt. My wife married me knowing the amount. Now we are debt-free with 2 kids and finally moving home.
Awesome.
So there you go.
Nice.
Well
Right
done.
on.
Making it happen.
Cal Ratch says, stayed the weekend in San Francisco and the poop thing is definitely real.
Oh, yeah.
Man, that's crazy. Just everywhere.
Just so many beautiful cities have just been absolutely destroyed.
Yeah.
Like San Francisco, Portland, Seattle, just...
Dude,
Yeah.
San Francisco is one of the worst places I've ever been to.
Yeah, but it could be beautiful. It was in like the early
Right.
2000s. It was beautiful.
I was there. I did a few guest spots for Discovery.
Yeah.
So we did like some segments on like nuclear weapons and stuff. And one day before I'm going in, I went to a Mexican place to get food. And I've got like a hoodie on in my backpack with my computer in it because I'm going to do work. And they completely ignored me. And so I'm just standing there like watching the servers walk past me. And I'm like standing here. So finally I'm like, okay. And I just walk up into the restaurant. I'm standing there. And a woman goes, do you need something? And I went, yeah, food. And she went, yeah, just have a seat. So I'm like, did they think I was like a homeless guy?
Yeah, sounds like it.
Probably. I mean, I probably looked like a homeless guy.
Yeah.
But wow, that's a crazy experience. I go to New York. When I was working out in New York, I went to, I can't remember the steakhouse. It's in the Columbus Circle. It's like really expensive. And I'm wearing the same thing. And they're like, right this way, sir. And they're like, they don't care. They're like, do you have money? By all means, come on in.
Yeah.
They don't care. In San Francisco, they must not tolerate it. They just don't,
Yeah.
All right. William Hornoff says, greetings, Tim. Greetings all. Tim, you often use the phrase, don't attribute to malice what can be attributed to stupidity. Mm-hmm. Well, it's don't attribute to malice that which can be explained by incompetence. And have to disagree. Stupidity implies a lack of choice, ignorance. The left and those aligned actively choose to be malicious. Thoughts? So Hanlon's razor is never attribute to malice that which can be explained by incompetence. So not necessarily stupidity, lack of ability, lack of function, but it's not always. Sometimes people are malicious. Yeah. So you're talking about Antifa and people on the far left and all that stuff. They're malicious. Yes.
Yeah.
They're not all incompetent.
Right.
A lot of Democrats are incompetent.
Yes.
A lot of Republicans are too, to be fair.
Oh, yeah.
So, all right. Colin Sanders says, hey, Joe, Intel POG here. I always liked working with SF better than the Rangers and the SEALs. You guys can actually chill, have a beer. Is that true?
That's true. Yeah. Can confirm.
All right. Troy Dingman says, I wish my local government would have had a flyover for the fallen today with a bunch of aircraft from different generations. That would have been nice. That sounds really cool, actually.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right. Where are we at? Some people are... Kiabo Bandit says, Joe Biden is not my president. Hillary is, and she was the greatest president we've ever had. There you go.
I mean,
Timelines.
A dead ender.
Yeah. Okay, let's see. SD Kakarok says, just tuned in. So didn't hear the details of this stream. Spent 2005 in IED Alley of West Baghdad in 07-08 near some Green Berets in the Sunni Triangle. Joe seems like a pretty solid dude. Much respect.
Thank you.
There you go.
I was in those areas as well. Go Savadish. Yeah.
Oh, this is a really important question. GG Player says, Tim, I'm trying to grow a beard, but when I put my head on a pillow, it feels so itchy. Any advice? I don't know.
You get used to it?
Yeah, I don't know. I guess lay on your back.
Itch as needed.
Yeah, put your head on the back of the pillow.
Eat less salt.
There you go.
I think it gets softer if you don't eat a lot of salt.
Put a put wrap. No, I was gonna make a joke. I'm not gonna do it because people will take it seriously. I was gonna say take plastic wrap and
No.
Nope.
Oh no.
YouTube's gonna be like, that was serious. We're banning you. No. All right, let's see. Fiona is my B. Osdem Soldate says, Mr. Kent, I am a Navy vet and Hood River native, currently residing in Vantucky and Bothell.
Oh, right
I
on.
cannot wait to volunteer for your campaign. Bless you and yours.
Excellent. Thank you.
Right on.
Looking forward to it.
Very cool.
GG Player then asked again about his itchy beard. Sorry, I don't know to tell you, man.
Coconut oil.
All right, we'll just do
Yeah,
we'll
coconut
do
oil is good.
a couple more here. Hot Dog 400 says maybe 10 years from now your basic phone will be more powerful than the quantum computers today. 10 years from now?
5
I'm not
years?
entirely convinced. I don't know where we're at with quantum computing, but it needs like super freezing temperatures, I think, to operate. So,
Yeah.
but we'll see. Technology advances. All right, let's see. Oh, whoa, what's this? Skylar Tucker says world's largest meat processor, JBS, just got hit with a cyber attack like Colonial Pipeline. Look into it, please. A meat processor, you say? What a strange
Fascinating.
thing.
So the Federal Reserve got nailed, then a pipeline, now a meat processor.
Yeah.
Well, all right, we'll do one more. We got, let's see, Dak Janiel says, I lived in SF but moved to South Bay. There are needles everywhere. Everyone I know has stepped in poop. And I've been chased down Main Street a few times with people high off whatever they were on. LOL. LOL. What a response.
Yeah. Wow. He's patient.
Yeah. All right, my friends. This has been a great Memorial Day with all you guys hanging out watching. So thanks for being here. A lot of people are probably chilling, but hey, good for you. It's America. And just never forget the people who sacrificed so that you could have your long weekend and chill. So smash that like button. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel. Did I say hit the like button? I did. Hit it again. No, wait, don't hit it twice.
Wait.
Hit it once or 3 times, but not twice. You can follow the show, facebook.com/Timcast IRL, and share our video clips there. And on Instagram, at Timcast IRL. You can follow me personally at Timcast. We're live Monday through Friday, 8 p.m. We'll be back tomorrow. Is there anything you wanted to mention specifically of your campaign website or
absolutely.
contributions? Or
Yeah,
anything?
if people want to support us, they can go to joekentforcongress.com. They can read about all my stances on the issues there. Linktree to all my social media is on there as well. And if they can, I'd really appreciate a donation. So I'm up against the Republican establishment dollars and the Democrat establishment dollars. So fighting for the America First agenda. So anything they can contribute, I'd really appreciate. I put up $200,000 of my own dollars into my campaign just to kind of put my money where my mouth is. So $5, $10, $15 will help take this country back. So
Right
really
on, man.
appreciate
Best
it.
of luck.
Yeah, thank you.
You can also follow me at IanCrossland.net and at Ian Crossland across all social media. Thank you guys so much for coming.
I was listening to Ben Shapiro talk about some of these heroes, these stories. These guys did incredible things, and I'm so happy to have an actual veteran with us here on Memorial Day. And you guys can follow me on Twitter at Sour Patch Lidge as I attempt to surpass Sour Patch Kids in followers.
We will see all of you over at timcast.com for an exclusive bonus segment. So make sure you go there and sign up, become a member, help support our work. And thanks for hanging out. We'll see you all there.
Bye, guys.